our committee workforce development and a couple of presentations. Thank you.
Morning, Commissioner Morrison.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, parliamentarian. Thank you. Thank you all to our excellent staff who are keeping us going.
Yes, ma'am.
We'll just wait 1 minute and start at 8:30.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, parliamentarian, if you would please read our first item.
Good morning. Item 1 is a discussion item. Workforce development presentation to last approximately 10 minutes with Kyla Guyette, Executive Director of Workforce Investment Network, presenting.
Thank you so much. And Director Guyette, are you online?
I am.
Well, thank you. At our last committee, you were asked if you might bring us a presentation about kind of where we are during this pandemic as it relates to workforce development and any news you have for us.
Sure. I'm glad to talk to you guys all this morning. So the option to share my screen isn't really showing up on my control panel, so I'm just going through everything for you guys. So first, I just wanted to address what WIN actually is. So the Workforce Investment Network is the federally designated workforce development entity in Greater Memphis. We cover Shelby, Fayette, Tipton, and Lauderdale counties. WIN is probably most known as they oversee the contracted providers operating the American Job Centers throughout the region. We also serve as the lead workforce development convener and advocate throughout the region. And our primary customer is actually local business and creating a workforce system that effectively fills that talent need of local businesses. So since we're talking about our responsiveness to COVID, I wanted to give a little update on the timeline. So on March 20th, all of the American Job Centers actually closed to the public, with staff still reporting to centers, fielding calls, and continuing services to their current caseloads and extended hours from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. On April 1st, the American Job Center staff, Title I and Title III, were moved out of those offices and moved to an alternative work schedule environment. The Career Center services have continued, and they were available through phone, email, and Jobs for TN, which Jobs for TN is the state system that we utilize for workforce development. So on May 15th, we're planning for the American Job Centers to be open to the public by appointment only. So you have to have an appointment to come in and to be allowed into the building. The UI, which everybody is most interested in, the unemployment, will not be in centers. On June 1st, the American Job Centers will be open to the public on a limited basis and making sure we are practicing social distancing. So staff are going to be returned to the building in phases. So as more staff come into the building, the services are actually going to be broadened to accommodate that. So in general, WIOA has 3 funding streams. We serve general adults, we serve a class called dislocated worker, and we serve young adults in a category called youth. There's in-school young adults and out-of-school young adults that we serve. For this particular discussion, I think the category that everyone's thinking in their head are all the folks that have been laid off from their jobs or who experiencing job loss or layoffs. That is actually a dislocated worker. So dislocated workers are individuals who received a notice of layoff or an employer closing and are eligible for UI. Self-employed individuals can be dislocated workers if they are unemployed due to economic conditions. So dislocated worker programs are designed to help qualifying participants quickly return to the workforce and minimize the amount of time they're actually receiving UI benefits. Generally, workers are unlikely to return to the previous industry and may be provided specific training to upskill or to enter a new career field. So there has been announced, and I've had a lot of discussion around the National Dislocated Worker Grant. This is $100 million that was released by the Department of Labor. The applicants have to be states. So WIN is not able to be a direct applicant for these funds, but the state of Tennessee has submitted an application for these National Dislocated Worker Grant funds. And a little bit of that caveat to that is that we have not received those funds. We just have an idea of what we submitted, but everything in theory is still up for grabs. We don't know what the funding is going to look like. So this actually expands the definition of what dislocation means. And so it directly benefits workers that have been laid off due to quarantine, those having to miss work due to a family member care, workers who cannot report to normal workplaces due to social distancing, workers laid off due to business closure directly related to COVID. It's self-employed individuals who became unemployed due to COVID, and long-term unemployed individuals. So Greater Memphis is planning to utilize the National Dislocated Worker Grant in a couple of areas. So the first and the primary need and the primary usage of the Dislocated Worker Grant, should we receive them, will be disaster-related employment opportunities. So these are paid assignments for up to 100 individuals for 40 hours a week, 12 weeks at $18 an hour. So we're looking to put people into positions immediately that are directly related to the disaster recovery and cleanup. That's the caveat to those jobs. They have to be cleanup or recovery jobs. A lot of times these are jobs within municipalities that are having to respond to the crisis. We also are going to be doing some degree of supportive services in addition to what WIN normally does. We've expanded our policy to allow for one-time purchases of laptops or tablets to ensure the ability to participate in program activities, internet or electric bills to support the virtual participation is allowed in certain circumstances. So participants that are eligible for the laptops and electric bill and internet have to be fully enrolled and actually in an activity that requires their online participation. We've also asked for additional participant payments. So there will be other categories of additional needs related payments to individuals that may not be eligible for UI through no fault of their own. We are aware that there's some cases where someone did not quit their job and they've been laid off or they've been let go of their job, and for some other reason the system is not allowing them to receive unemployment benefits. They've been deemed ineligible. So we have asked for situations in that case to be able to provide additional funding to those individuals. So we still continue to have our formula funding outside of the National Dislocated Worker Grant. So adult and dislocated worker funds, we will tap into those funds specifically for the current period of time to continue assisting customers eligible to return back to work. So we have continued funding of training opportunities in person and virtually delivered. So a lot of our training providers that have been approved through WIN have moved to a virtual platform and are open for training opportunities. We also want a broader reach of the National Dislocated Worker Grant activities. So anything that is allowed under the National Dislocated Worker Grant that we are able to pay for out of DW funds, we are going to be taking them out of normal dislocated worker funds so that the dislocated worker grant funds can go as far as we possibly can stretch them. For businesses, we are able to continue with incumbent worker training. So incumbent worker training is usually considered a layoff aversion. So you would lay off an X number of individuals because they don't have the skills that you need. So we will come in with incumbent worker training to upskill those individuals to avoid layoff. We also are able to do on-the-job training. So this is instances when you may want to hire an individual, but they are lacking a certain skill set. We will pay up to a portion of the cost of training that individual on the job to defray the cost of the time you would have to train that employee. And so that is money directly received to the employer. We also are able to serve youth most directly and most efficiently right now is out of school youth. So those are funds earmarked for 16 to 24-year-olds who are low income and present with specific barriers to success. A major focus and investment of these funds is in the paid work experience category. These are generally young adults who are disconnected from education or from the workplace. So they may have not finished high school, or they have finished high school and not have gone on to anything else. So those are considered out of school youth. And WIN has the capability of funding paid work experience, but also additional initiatives for opportunity youth. The activities generally that we fund are work preparedness, financial literacy, adult mentoring, entrepreneurship and leadership opportunities, and making sure we have connections to other resources like mental health and substance abuse counseling, and post-secondary education awareness, tutoring skills. So we make sure that we have connected these young adults to lots of different resources. So just as important as what WIN is what WIN is not. So while WIN oversees the American Job Centers, we do not handle unemployment insurance. UI is administered solely by the state of Tennessee. There is not a physical UI presence in the AJC locations, and AJC staff cannot access UI claims. Title III staff, which are known as Wagner-Pizer staff, are state staff who were co-located in the AJCs. They have migrated over to UI, but will not be present in the AJCs until after June 1st. WIN also does not administer any of the loan programs currently being advised through the SBA or any other entities. So I just wanted to talk, and this is a slide that I would love for you guys to be able to see, the statewide UI claims by the numbers. So in the week ending March 14th, across the state, there were 2,700 claims for UI. The week ending March 21st, there were 39,000 claims. The week ending March 28th, there were 94,482. The week ending March 4th, there was 116,141. April 11th, 74,772. And April 15th, 68,968. So as you can see, beginning March 21st, we had a dramatic upswing, with the highest being the week ending April 4th, with over 116,000 people just in that week filed unemployment claims. In the month of March, Greater Memphis had 12,548 new UI claims filed. So keep in mind that that is not just Shelby County, that is all 4 counties that we oversee. The top areas of claims were filed by industry sectors. The top is accommodation and food service. So far there have been 9,792 claimants that were from accommodation and food service. Retail has 5,957 claimants. Administrative and waste services, 5,036. Healthcare and social assistance, 4,567 folks. And other services, with the exception of public administration, is 3,503 individuals. So those are by far and away the top claimant industries. Everything else is kind of a distant 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. But by far and away, accommodation and food service has been the category, the industry sector that has been hit the hardest. I wanted to make sure I shared some numbers with everyone, some contact information. So for the American Job Centers, we've had this number published and it's still active. For triage, it's 901-504-6580. That is the number that you would call to receive services at the American Job Center that are not unemployment related. Any of the other services, and to get enrolled into services, you would call that number and they would get you to the right party. So the right office, whether it be in Shelby County or one of the other counties, and to get to the correct career advisor to help you. Current customers are also able to access their already established Jobs for TN account. They have email and Skype access to their current career advisor. And again, they can call the triage number should they need additional assistance. The contact info that everybody really wants is for UI. So for claims, there is one number that is shared statewide. And so that is why people have had a lot of trouble getting anyone to answer, because the entire state has to use the same claims number. And it's 844-432-0969. It is available 24 hours a day, but the system is closed from 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. So there's limited ability for anyone to assist during those times. The easiest way for anyone to get assistance is by filing online and for checking your account online. So that's, you can register and file a claim through jobs4tn.gov. It's the number 4, jobs4tn.gov. For employers, there's also a couple of contact information numbers. So for technical assistance, if you're an employer trying to file, it's 615-770-1712. That's technical questions related to the online system. If you have general questions about how to file employer notifications and have other questions related to being an employer, the number is 844-224-5818. Employers can also reach the UI system at employer.helpdesk@tn.gov. And I'm open to taking any questions that I have from anybody.
Thank you so much, Kyla.
Sure.
Excellent information and very well needed. I'll start with a question. As far as you were talking about the on-the-job training possibility, I appreciated the way you pointed out what when is and then also what when is not, because there is likely some confusion around that. But when you were talking about the on-the-job training, I could see that some employers might like having the opportunity to have, paid training. So how would they access that? Would that be through the jobs, the 901-504 telephone number, and how do they find out what training what's available to be paid for?
Yes, ma'am. So you can contact the triage number, so the 901 number, and they will get sent to a career advisor that handles business services.
Mhm.
And that individual can walk any employer through what the rules and regulations are. So the only caveat I like to tell people so they don't get themselves into a mess, you have to contact the American Job Center and get a claimant, make sure that there's someone enrolled in the American Job Center and you're employing someone that, it can even be an employee that you know, but they have to be registered with the American Job Center before you hire them. If they're an already hired employee, OJT would not apply to them. So even if you have someone that you want to hire and you'd like to use on-the-job training funds, get them over to the American Job Center first, have them enroll, have yourself set up as as an employer, and then we can work through the OJT process. For incumbent worker training funds, you can also call the triage number, and then they will be able to kind of walk you through that process. That process is a little different because the employer is actually the customer and not an individual person. And so they will walk you through what is allowed to be paid. It's up to $25,000 that we're able to pay for incumbent worker training.
Great. Well, I see we're kind of running, we have a second presentation today, but one last question would be, for anyone that's interested in your slides and this information, would you send it on to our office so that we could forward it and they would have the telephone numbers and statistics that you provided? Please?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you so much. Stay healthy. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Bye-bye. Let's see. Okay, parliamentarian, we have a second presentation. If you would please read item number 2.
Yes, ma'am. Item 2 is a discussion item, Memphis Area Chamber of Commerce, to last approximately 10 minutes with Beverly Robertson and Bobby White and Ernest Strickland presenting.
Thank you so much. Beverly, are you online, or Bobby? I know they were working to get set up, so I see the presentation. Anybody there? Beverly or Bobby or Ernest?
They're here, Commissioner. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Karan?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hey there. Can we see you?
Ah, yes, good to be seen, and it's always good to see you, Brandon. I feel like we are part of the dynamic duo in Washington, D.C. So,
There you go. That's right.
yes. Look,
Well,
thank
you know
you for. Mhm.
We're so pleased to have you. And I was able to join part of your virtual summit yesterday with Mayor Harris. So thank you for also updating the commission.
Thank you very much. And thank you for giving us the opportunity to present. So I know I've got about 3 minutes. I'm going to try to do this as quickly as I
No,
can.
you've got a little bit longer. It's okay if we go over a little bit. I'm sorry,
Oh, okay.
we went too long on the other presentation.
Thank you, Brandon. So I just want you to know that we have been on this road for being Business Information Central since the middle of February when we started, and we can move on to the next slide. What we have is we have a website that is the front door for the Greater Memphis Chamber, and it has a lot of invaluable information on it. That website allows people to go to it and get information designed for individuals. So if people need loans or if people need a specific set of services, that website will be able to help them out. We also have a small business and hospitality area on there, and small businesses need so much help because they are suffering so tremendously now. There is a link section. The green section has links to our webinars, so people who might have missed them can take advantage of the information from those webinars right there on that website. We have upcoming events as well. And then, of course, there's a message from the Greater Memphis Chamber. We actually conducted a series of research studies among businesses early on, and we do it on a weekly basis. One, to identify gaps or issues and concerns that they have. Two, to be able to help them address those by connecting them with resources. So people to resources and resources to people. We also have an open 901 directory, which allows us to promote those businesses that are open right now, to keep them open and keep them running. We want people to go there, buy from them, so that when everything is on the other side, they don't have such a tough hill to climb. We have immediate job openings. We have about 70 entities, companies that are listed that have jobs all the way from material handlers to business consultants. There are a number of those on our website that people can literally see, and then there's contact information that would allow them to apply. We have a webinar series every Tuesday and Thursday that deals with a topic of interest to those businesses that may be closed down, or to individuals, members of the chamber and otherwise, who may need information. We have done a series of conference calls and webinars with our congressional representatives, with the health department on a weekly basis. We've done webinars on the SBA loan program with both our local folks as well as the regional leadership team out of Atlanta. We have had attorneys come on board in conference calls to talk to people about How do you access the small business loan? If you have questions about that, go to your banker, because your banker is the first line of communication to help you get those SBA loan applications filled out for the payroll protection program. Same thing. If you don't understand it, if it is not clear to you, there's got to be a resource, and the bankers are your resources to help you think through it and get all your information together for it. So that's really about our website. Just one other piece, and then I want to turn it over to Ernest. We also are standing up a business response council to deal with not just recovery, but resilience and reset. When I talk about resilience, the question really is, what could we have done differently as a business to ensure that we don't experience the trauma again that we experienced this time? So it really is about helping businesses to prepare for, heaven forbid, earthquake, tornado, or another pandemic. They need to be fortified. They need to have some plans in place so that the trauma that they're experiencing now, the layoffs that we see, the furloughs that we see, may not happen in the same volume if we think through that today. And now's the time to be able to do that and put that in place. The other thing that we're really keen on is we want to make Memphis sort of a more resilient and more equitable community on the other side of this pandemic. We know that the issues that we're experiencing with the deaths and those folks who are coming down with it are really steeped in the issues that we have in our marketplace, whether that's low-income housing or education or transportation. Those are all variables that we need to reset. And the chamber is going to be standing this group up, and we want to hear your voice, Brandon, the voice of members of the county commission, city council, business community, small and large, industry sectors need to be engaged. It's got to be something that we do now, and it can't take forever. So we've got a short window to be able to do this work, develop an outcome, and assign people responsibility for making sure that this action can get done. So I said all that. I know it may have taken more than 3 minutes, but I do want to now turn it over to Ernest so he can talk about workforce.
I saw Ernest. Thank you, Beverly. There he is. Hello. Good morning, Ernest.
Good morning, Commissioner. Thanks for having us. So right now with workforce development, we really have taken a two-pronged approach. We know that several companies have been disrupted, causing them to lay off and dislocate large numbers of individuals. Kyla mentioned those large numbers, and they're staggering. What we wanted to do was respond quickly by creating the available jobs posting, which is on our COVID-19 business resource page. Beverly referenced that page. On that page, along with the variety of good jobs that are posted from healthcare, transportation, a number of sectors, we wanted to include some tools that individuals could utilize to understand what their skills are. You know, they may not have been in the job market for a while and need a skills refresher. And so we're providing a skills match tool for free, where an individual can take a quick assessment. They can know their strengths, know their skill sets, and be connected with jobs that are specifically looking for those skills. In addition, as I said, many individuals have not been in the job market in a while. Some folks don't have a resume, and so we have a resume optimizer on the site as well. Not taken away from the great resource and work that an individual can receive from Jobs for TN and our local WIN, but we wanted to create a quick solution where individuals can come to our page and minimize the time that they are dislocated from the workforce. So the other approach is to continue the work that we had started with our signature initiative, which is Upskill 901. You participated back in October of 2019, so long ago, right? Where we brought together over 300 stakeholders with the goal of really reducing the number of silos that exist in our market so that we all can work together and create a collective impact as it relates to strengthening our workforce ecosystem. I'm happy to report that from that October summit, we are currently still engaged with over 200 of those stakeholders. We're meeting with them on a monthly basis, and we've organized them in pillars based on the populations that they serve. So we have an education pillar, an opportunity adult pillar, a youth pillar, a reentry pillar, and a faith-based pillar. And I'm proud to say, and I have to brag on the faith-based pillar for a little while, they really stepped up when we were faced with this particular challenge. Many of those organizations, we partner with the Memphis Christians Pastor Network. Many of the churches and faith-based groups that are part of that network have opened their doors to provide food to not only Shelby County schools, but others in need. They've also mobilized to start to make those masks that are much needed by many of the healthcare individuals. And so they really stepped up. We have our meeting tomorrow with the joint pillars so that we can continue to asset map, continue to know who is doing the great work in the various communities, and to recognize where we have synergies between those different pillars. And so we're still focused on the work of aligning our workforce ecosystem, reducing silos. Now we're looking at how we can respond to the need of the day, but also be thinking long-term about strengthening our ecosystem for the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're thrilled to know that you all are, and I knew you were, continuing such good work, and as the front door to both the city and the county and for business as we come back from the pandemic. I believe your role is going to be all the more important. And the Upskills workshop I thought was outstanding and such a beautifully orchestrated collaborative effort. And I hope a lot of the listening public got to hear you talk just now about your skills where you help potential workers check out where their giftedness is, because I do believe in today's economy, we're going to see the need sometimes to change or pivot directions based on our skills and based on the needs of the workforce that, as we talked about at the summit. So that's exciting. And I'll ask you the same question that I asked Kyla. With the information you've provided, if anyone should need it, would you also just send the deck to me or to our office so that we can provide it to those who want to take advantage of the skills checklist or any of your other opportunities for jobs? So thank you so much, Ernest and Beverly.
Yes, Bobby is on. Bobby's also on.
Huh?
Bobby is also on.
Oh, good, Bobby. Good morning, Bobby. Do you have a piece for us? I know, and our chairman, Mark Billingsley, also has a comment. Did Bobby have something he wanted to add?
Yes, I don't know if he's muted or not. If he is, if you could unmute him. I know he's on. I see his deck here.
I see his deck.
He's unmuted on our side.
Huh. Okay. That's
Bobby?
on you. Well, you can see though the work in which he's been engaged. He's done a really great job of engaging Congressman Cohen and Congressman Kustoff on conference calls. And I think on the Kustoff call, we probably had about 160 people listening in on that, and had about that many with Congressman Cohen. We've also been engaged on a number of task forces at the state level, Governor Lee's task force, Metro City's task force, and Bobby works very frequently with our lobbyist from the state of Tennessee, Wendell Moore, who does a super job in allowing us to understand very quickly what legislation hits the floor and how we need to respond to it. If it is favorable for Memphis's business or unfavorable, we react in very different ways and galvanize the business community. And of course, at the local level, he's very much engaged with county government. In fact, the conference yesterday was part of his brainchild, and it was an awesome conference. Lots of presenters, people got a lot of information. And so he is doing a super job for the chamber on the public policy and advocacy side. Thank
Oh,
you.
I know he is. And Bobby, we know you're there. I apologize that we can't hear you. We've had some technical glitches at times, but we're so thankful that we were able to see and hear both Beverly and Ernest. And thank you, Bobby, also for continuing to engage around both the federal, state, and local initiatives. So I know Memphis is going to come back stronger than ever because we have, and our whole county, not just Memphis, but the chamber represents all our municipalities. And here I want to recognize Mayor Harris and also Chairman Mark Billingsley.
Hey, thanks a lot, Commissioner Morrison. And I only caught the tail end of the conversation, but I wanted to just express my appreciation and thanks for the chamber and all the efforts that they're doing to communicate what is going on to the business community, because without their hard work, we wouldn't know what to do when we get to the next phase of this and get on the path to recovery. And so we had a really outstanding virtual conference yesterday, which was the first for me. And the chamber really led that effort. There were hundreds of participants, which just shows that there's a lot of real pent up economic activity out there that's ready to be set loose when it's safely to set it loose. And so just thanks to Beverly Robertson and also Bobby White for orchestrating that convening yesterday. And of course, we were glad to participate on the county side. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Harris. Karen Billingsley,
Good morning, Commissioner Morrison.
I wanted to
Good morning. I just want to first thank Ernest Strickland for the presentation today. I certainly want to, can you hear me, Commissioner Morrison? Can you hear me, Commissioner Morrison?
ask.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Commissioner Morrison
Yes.
has a bad connection.
Okay, very good. I just want to personally thank Ernest Strickland for his presentation today. I also want to recognize and thank my friend Beverly Robertson, the president and CEO of the Greater Memphis Chamber. Also want to thank Willie Gregory for his leadership during this difficult time, who's serving as chairman of the Greater Memphis Chamber. And I just want to echo on behalf of the commission, Beverly, whatever this body can do to work together with the chamber over, I'm not going to say the next couple of months, but for the next couple of years as we get through this, please know that we're here for you, especially as it relates to public policy and advocacy. I think we could work really well together and try to garner additional resources for the county as well as for the chamber. As you and I discussed the other day, this is going to be months and months worth of effort to try to reopen small businesses. And I just want to thank the chamber for everything you're going to do. And we want to do it with you. So please let us know and let Commissioner Morrison know how we can better partner with you. But we are very, very grateful.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Billingsley, and thank you so much for Commissioner Morrison. Anytime, you know that I will reach out to you because I realize that you all are such a dynamic resource for us. So we will be coming to you sooner rather than later, and don't act like you don't know me when I call you, okay? I know you won't.
That's a deal. I won't.
Thank you very much.
But sincerely, this next phase is going to be difficult. We've potentially lost so many businesses, but I know with the help of the Greater Memphis Chamber, we'll get out of this and we'll be stronger at the end of this process. So again, thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate your kind words.
Commissioner Milton?
Are we ready to get started?
Yes, sir. Where you are.
Okay, good. Okay, well then, let's call to order the committee for CEP grants. Madam Parliamentary, please read the first item.
Yes, sir. Item 1 is a resolution awarding county funds from the FY 2020 operating budget in the amount of $7,000 to Memphis Leadership Foundation DBA Restore Corps, a charitable organization, sponsored by Commissioner McWright.
Okay. We have a
Motion to approve by Billingsley.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, we have a motion and a second. Is there anyone who wish to add any conversation to this?
Sir, who was the second?
Who was the second?
Commissioner Bradford.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bradford. Seeing none, please go to a vote.
You see Commissioner Wright?
Yes, I do. Commissioner Wright, please go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning. In light of the economic conditions that we're in and the spending freeze that we passed last meeting, it was my intention to pull this item from consideration for right now. So I'd like to move to pull this item from consideration.
Okay.
Second by Bradford.
And second, let's go ahead and pull that item. Seeing no objections, let's go ahead and pull that item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Of course. Please read the second.
Yes, sir. Item 2 is a resolution awarding county funds from the FY 2020 operating budget in the amount of $21,500 to Let's Innovate Through Education, Light Memphis, a charitable organization, sponsored by Commissioner Michael Whaley.
Okay. May I have a motion and a second on that, please? I motion it. Do I have a second?
Second by Bradford.
Second by Bradford. Please, Commissioner Whaley, do you have any comments on this?
Yeah, hey, good morning, Commissioner Milton. Good morning, everyone. Just want to disclose on this that I serve in a volunteer capacity on the board of Light Memphis. And this has been in the queue for a while, and so was just able to get it through here. So thank you for bringing it up.
Okay, we had a little audio issue, but we got the gist of that. Thank you so much. Seeing no others, let's go to a vote, please.
Commissioner Turner. Morrison.
I had a technical glitch. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you.
Thank you.
Sawyer. Whaley.
Aye.
Wright.
Aye.
Milton.
Aye.
Brooks.
Aye.
Brooks. Bradford.
Yes.
Ford. Mills.
Aye.
Lowry. Jones.
Aye.
Billings.
Aye.
We have aye votes from Commissioners Morrison, Whaley, Wright, Milton, Brooks, Bradford, Mills, Jones, and Billingsley. We have 9 aye votes.
Okay, the item goes down with favorable recommendation, and that concludes the CEP Grants Committee. Thank you.
All right. Call to order the Committee number 2, Public Works. Madam Parliamentarian, please read the first item.
Good morning. Yes, sir. Item 1 is a resolution approving the Second Amendment to lease agreement between the Memphis and Shelby County Port Commission and Jet Infrastructure, IA Memphis LLC, as approved by the Board of Commissioners of the Memphis and Shelby County Port Commission on October 19th, 2019, sponsored by Commissioner David Bradford.
Thank you. I will move item number second.
Second.
I heard a second from Morrison. Is there anyone on the line that has a report on this item? All right.
I'm sorry, yes, sir. Mr. Randy McPherson, hold on one.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Richardson.
Good morning, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. I see your screen as well, so please proceed.
Good morning. My name is Randy Richardson. I'm Executive Director of the Memphis Shelby County Port Commission. We were an entity created in 1947 to manage about 15,000 acres of industrial property for the city of Memphis and Shelby County. That property being predominantly on President's Island and Pigeon Industrial Park. This is a project area what we call the public terminal that you see on your screen. We created this back in 1953 originally. We're in the process of doing some major renovations and working on building this back up to a modern standard. As part of that process, we got a $1.7 million grant from the state of Tennessee to do rail infrastructure improvements on this site. In order to do that, we went to Jet Infrastructure, which is the entity you see in the green color, who had 9 acres leased from the Memphis and Shelby County Port Commission. And they ended up having a project that did not occur on the bulk of the property, about 8.4 acres. And they were no longer using it. As you can see, it's mainly open. They do maintain a small 0.68 acre pipeline transfer facility, which is part of a pipeline that goes from West Memphis, Arkansas, and supplies jet fuel back up to FedEx at the airport. There's no people at this facility, but what the Second Amendment is asking is that we reduce their property by roughly a little over 8 acres. And turn that back over to the Port Commission so that we can use that as part of the redevelopment and put in the rail infrastructure in that location to enhance the entire property. What will end up occurring is WACO, who through an RFP process is going to be our terminal operator, will expand into that area, and we'll be coming back to the Commission sometime later this summer with a master lease agreement for the roughly 50 acres for operation of the public terminal. We anticipate 2 or 3 different industries coming in this area, and this is a second phase of the process in getting this property ready for future development. So asking you to approve this, we'll take back some acres from them and then add it to another lease later in the summertime. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Richardson. I do not have any questions. Chairman Billingsley, I saw you pop up. Are you good?
Commissioner, no questions. Thank you so much for the presentation.
All right. Commissioner Jones has posted a question. He is asking, is there any cost to the county, or does this generate revenue?
This is a negative. I mean, it is a zero cost to the county. The expenditure is going to be any related to this will be handled by WACO. They're going to actually be doing the match for the rail grant. So we don't anticipate any county or city funds being used in this project.
Excellent. Commissioner Jones, do you have any other questions?
Okay, it's no cost, but does it generate revenue? for us?
Yes, ultimately, it would, yes, sir. It will generate some revenues, and those revenues will go to the operation of the Port Commission, and any excess revenues will go toward the operation of EDGE, which is the parent company for the Port Commission as of 2011, when EDGE was created.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Jones. Commissioner Milton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Richardson, you're saying that you're looking at other industries leasing out that area. What type of industries are you looking at?
Yes, we're probably looking at some transfer facilities. I don't know if it'll be the things of like containers, steel, it'll be bulk commodities. We also are looking at some potential loading, unloading of farm-related products such as fertilizers and things of that nature. This historically has been a general cargo terminal, and that's probably what it'll stay.
Got you. Any EPA issues?
No, sir. None whatsoever. All of this property is was created back as the Port of Memphis project back in the late 1940s and 1950s. So there's no ground issues there. And of course, we are going through all the environmental processes, to get the permits to build whatever we do build. So.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Milton. Mr. Richardson, thank you so much for your presentation. Let's prepare the screens to vote on this item.
Commissioner Turner? I can see you, but I can't hear you, but I believe you said aye.
I don't think
Morrison?
I think Turner was shaking his head, but
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
oh, okay.
I'm okay.
Okay, thank you.
Aye for Morrison.
Sawyer? Whaley?
Aye.
Wright?
Aye.
Milton?
Aye.
Brooks?
Aye.
Bradford?
Yes.
Ford?
Yes.
Mills?
Aye.
Lowry?
Aye.
Jones?
Aye.
And Billingsley?
I vote aye.
We have aye votes from Commissioners Turner, Morrison, Whaley, Wright, Milton, Brooks, Bradford, Ford, Mills, Lowry, Jones, and Chairman Billingsley. We have 12 aye votes.
Thank you so much. That item will go down with a favorable recommendation, and that concludes the Public Works Committee. Thank you.
Commissioner Sawyer?
I don't see Commissioner Sawyer, so I'll step in.
Thank you.
And call to order the community service. Madam Parliamentarian, please read the first item and only item.
Yes, sir. Item 1 is a resolution approving a service contract with Metropolitan Interfaith Association, MIFA, in the amount of $113,204 for April 1, 2020 through June 30th, 2020, with the option to renew for 2 additional one-year periods beginning July 1st through June 30th for the provision of providing congregate and home-delivered meal services during the coronavirus 19 pandemic. This item requires the expenditure of FY 2020 federal grant funds in the amount not to exceed $339,613, sponsored by Commissioner Tammy Sawyer.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion and a second, please?
Moved by Morrison.
Second by Mills.
Okay, thank you. Is there any comments on this, please, Commissioner? Seeing none, let's move to a vote, please.
Commissioner Turner,
Aye.
Morrison,
Aye.
Sawyer, Whaley,
Aye.
Wright,
Aye.
Milton,
Aye.
Brooks,
Aye.
Bradford,
Yes.
Ford,
Aye.
Mills,
Aye.
Lowry,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
and Billingsley.
Aye.
We have aye votes from Commissioners Turner, Morrison, Whaley, Wright, Milton, Brooks, Bradford, Ford, Mills, Lowry, Jones, and Billingsley. We have 12 aye votes.
Okay, items go down with favorable recommendation. That concludes the Committee for Community Services. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners, and good morning to the public. I call to order Committee Number 10, General Government. Commissioners, had a request this morning for Mayor Harris to give an update. He's going to primarily this morning focus only on the coronavirus, but of course you're welcome to ask any other questions. I know he'll be happy to hear you, but again, he's going to give a brief update this morning on the coronavirus efforts. As you know, Commissioners, this is a very fluid issue. It changes by the hour. The Joint Task Force are working really well together. I thought compliments to the mayor and to the media on Action News 5. They had a really great town hall meeting. And as you heard in a previous meeting today, we're working collaboratively with the Greater Memphis Chamber. So a lot of really good work going on. Mr. Mayor, if you'd like to give us an executive update, you have the floor.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. Good morning. I'll cover really quickly in the next, 3 or 4 or 5 minutes here, 3 areas. First, I want to talk real briefly about the recovery platform. In addition, I want to just talk about a couple things that may have happened recently and also about our federal stimulus funding. So as to the first item, we did all come together, all of the suburban mayors, so that's the 7 municipalities in Shelby County, to hammer out a framework for economic recovery. We've worked on that framework collectively for a very long time across many work sessions. I like to say that those work sessions were very productive. It was not just that people were heard, everybody was listened to, and everybody was a very equal partner in that work, and everybody's pretty proud of the economic framework that was put out. That framework has several phases, and we are hopeful that we'll enter into phase 1 very soon. But the short of it is, it's an economic framework with at least 2 kind of guiding principles. The first is a set of indicators of success, and so the framework sets out indications of success to include things like whether or not our hospitals have capacity, whether or not we have adequate testing capacity, whether or not our confirmed cases are in downward trajectory, and fourthly, whether or not our public health department is equipped and substantial enough to conduct the kind of investigations and contact tracing that will be needed for the foreseeable future. So those are our 4 indicators of success. And those are the areas that drive the decision about whether to advance from phase to phase. Each one of those phases we've estimated should be about 14 days of transition to analyze the data. So with respect to entering the first phase, we are several days in to analyzing the data to see if we are ready to enter into phase 1. In addition to the indicators of success, I'll just point out one other general feature of the platform. The platform also includes various guidelines for the various industries. Obviously, it will continue to evolve as we receive feedback from different industry participants, but it's actually pretty elaborate right now. And so it's guidelines around how they can conduct their business when we do transition safely. So it's things like whether or not gloves should be worn. And actually gloves was an area of debate, and we decided not to pull back a little bit on gloves. But it does include things like face masks and other ways you can keep employees and customers safe as we enter into the next phase of this, the road to recovery. Secondly, we have been real active around our coordinated response on COVID. As you know, this commission created about a $500,000 fund in direct assistance to families. That fund was in high demand. And so in the first 2 days, we received, I think, close to 5,000 applications for the $500,000 fund. So we'll be back to the commission with a COVID relief program part 2 and maybe part 3 very, very soon. But that fund was well received, and we were able to take applications for food assistance and for utility assistance and for rent assistance. At the same time, the chairman mentioned that we have been trying as best we can to continue to get the word out to the community around the coordinated response and efforts that we're taking to confront this public health emergency. So our press conferences this week will go to daily press conferences in order to make sure the community is aware of where we sit with respect to the data. In addition to that, we did a town hall with a lot of municipal leaders yesterday on WMCT TV for about an hour. That was commercial free to talk about the coordinated response. And in partnership with the Memphis Chamber, yesterday we had a all morning virtual conference that was really well attended with hundreds of businesses and business interests represented. All right, so the third point I'll hit on before I hand it back to the chair for any comments or any discussion with the commissioners is we did make application to the federal government for stimulus money. Of course, there was stimulus money available, and we applied for $50 billion, and we got access to $50 million. And so we received word that we'd have access to $50 million for COVID-related expenses. We received word this week. The city of Memphis got their word last week, and we received word this week that we would be approved for $50 million in COVID-related expenditures. There are a few important things to consider as we try to spend down those resources. One thing to consider is that the COVID stimulus money that we have received cannot be used for budget shortfalls. And so we still have to, on a separate track, go about the work of resolving our budget deficit, because the $50 million may not be used for budget shortfalls at this time. At the same time, we need to make sure, no matter what is decided, that we have resources to fund our urgent needs. As I've mentioned to you all many times before, we have really urgent and important needs that will be constantly coming through the pipeline and constantly put in front of you with respect to our community services agency and with respect to our health department. And so we will propose to you a relatively massive expansion of the health department in order to meet the needs of COVID over the long term. So those needs are urgent, and those needs will be put in front of you, and we have to make sure we have the resources to pay for those kinds of needs. Not to mention our needs with respect to our emergency responders and our Office of Emergency Preparedness. Let's see here. Another item I'll mention is we can't get crossways with the feds on the money, because if we spend for an ineligible purpose, then we will have to pay back those resources. And so we cannot afford to pay back those resources at this time. So we need to all kind of be cognizant of that if we spend for an ineligible purpose, we will be required to pay back those resources. A fourth point with respect to the stimulus money is we need to receive and work with the municipalities. So we need to receive reports from municipalities around their COVID-related expenses and feedback from them. And we will need to work with the various municipalities. Of course, the city of Memphis, because of its size, was able to directly apply to the federal government for COVID-related expenses. The other municipalities so far have not been eligible to make that direct application to the federal government. And so we need to make sure we're good partners with those municipalities and that they're treated fairly through this process. With that, Mr. Chairman, I think I probably exhausted my 5 minutes here. So maybe I'll just stop right there and see if you or the commissioners want to talk more about any of the items that I presented.
Mayor Harris, thank you for your executive update. Based on information you have, Mayor Harris, do you expect there to be a second phase of funding from the feds as it relates to the county? Has there been any indication of that?
I think lots of us are pushing for a second stimulus funding that would apply to state and local governments. It is extremely tough to know right now what might happen. So I can't say for sure, Mr. Chairman.
I understand. And then this only other question I have, and then I'll go to the screen and recognize my colleagues. At the last county commission, Mayor, you know, the county commission approved $2.5 million for coronavirus relief. Do you have any update as it relates to our ability to get the supplies that we have ordered through that? I'm hearing from lots of people that, you know, Commissioner Bradford last night just had a request in his district for PPE for a high-risk population of seniors. Any update on how difficult that is to get the PPE and the other items that we funded, or any time certain on when we might have that those items arrive in Shelby County?
So to order most of these items, we are doing that work through the joint task force, and we have significant orders in the pipeline right now. If there is a special need population that a commissioner hears about that you want to see get that kind of protective equipment, I would recommend contacting me or Brenda Jones or Chief Gillum, and we will make it happen. In fact, we just received a request, I feel like maybe yesterday or maybe the day before yesterday, from Commissioner Milton for funeral homes and their needs and so forth. And we were able to meet that request, and I'm confident we can meet most of the requests that you all hear about. So just email me or Chief Gillum or Brenda Jones, and we will put those things in the pipeline and try to meet those requests. Additionally, Mr. Chairman, just one more comment on your last issue about what second stimulus that it would apply to state and local governments. In anticipation of that, I've said that our budget process would have at least 3 parts. The first part would see if we could address the FY20. We're kind of finished with that part. We're in the second part, the main part of the budget process. But there's a third part of the budget process we already kind of anticipate will happen several months from now. And that is once we receive clarity on what the stimulus packages comprehensively look like. And so I've tentatively said that would be December. That'd be about 6 months in after we get complete clarity. And then we would make adjustments to the budget based on the full information that we have up until that point. So there will be a phase 3 to the budget process. We've got to get through the budget process right now, but there will be a phase 3 as we get more information, and if the federal government decides to intervene and to supply state and local governments even more resources.
Very good. And Mayor Harris, I just want to share with you, I know you're at the Emergency Command Center a lot, but I was there this past Saturday. The commission was really delighted to fund lunch for about 100 emergency workers and health department leaders that are over at our Emergency Command Center. They're working from 8 in the morning till 9 o'clock at night. Unbelievable work, as you've seen firsthand, Mayor Harris. we're going to continue to do that for our healthcare workers as a small symbol of our support. Individual commissioners are coming out of their own pockets, not government pockets, but out of their own pockets to continue to do that. This upcoming Friday, Commissioner Bradford is going to sponsor that for our healthcare workers. And then there's a whole bunch of other commissioners that will be doing that each week. But again, Mayor Harris, I just want to share with you how pleased I am to see the work that's happening 7 days a week, all day long. It's exhausting for those workers, as you've seen firsthand, but boy, their commitment is amazing. I'm now going to go to the screen. Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
I was just going to say thanks, Mr. Chairman, for the launch. They were extremely excited. Like you said, we have 100 employees out there right now, and I should say, well, there are 100 people working on COVID coordinated response right now, and of that 100, there are dozens of volunteers. So you all bought lunch for the volunteers that are there working very hard. There are City of Memphis employees that are part of that operation. So you bought lunch for City of Memphis employees, and of course our health department and emergency preparedness. So there are about 100 people working, as you say, 7 days a week in one form or fashion on coordinated response to COVID. Thank you.
Well, all of our commissioners are going to step up and do that with their personal dollars. And I want to thank all the commissioners who've already volunteered, but we're going to try to keep that going every Friday. It's just a small symbol and a thank you. Mr. Mayor, if you just got a few more minutes, we have a couple commissioners that just want to ask you a question. First is Commissioner Willie Brooks. Commissioner Brooks, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the update. I do have a couple of questions as relating to the stimulus. When do you anticipate receipt of the stimulus funds?
So this scenario has worked a little bit differently. So we have access to the resources right now, but we still have to spend per the guidelines on eligible expenses.
Okay. And will those funds be associated with expenses incurred through the health department, EMS, and community service?
It's COVID related expenses, generally speaking. So we do have pretty wide discretion. So I'd like to be thoughtful about how we spend the money, but we do have pretty wide discretion, but it has to be for COVID related expenses. And again, the downside risk, if we get outside of the COVID emergency, then we'll have to repay the money in a year when we don't have the money to repay.
No. So as I understand, those are restricted funds. Is that correct?
COVID related expenses, that is correct, yes.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Brooks, thank you so much for your questions. Vice Chairman Eddie Jones.
Thank you,
Commissioner
Mr.
Jones, you
Chairman.
have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mayor, so this money that we're receiving now, what is the sunset date on when we have to use it?
We have to spend the money by the end of the year.
All right. So are you guys aware that Congress just passed some more money specifically to assist for our hospitals in the second round of dollars? And are you applying for that so that we can find, maybe get awarded some monies that will help our hospitals?
We're aware of the money, and we've talked to Regional One about the money, and I don't believe there are any guidelines to make application yet. So we have to kind of wait on that process to evolve.
All right, and so in talking with people in DC, it is my understanding that it's the second round, there's funding in there specifically for hospitals.
Yes,
So-
there is money, stimulus money for hospitals, yes.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we will be applying for it.
Yes, sir, we will.
Okay, that's all the questions that I have, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mayor, I want to thank you for your executive update today. I know we'll probably see you a little later in the day, but thank you for all you're doing on the coronavirus and helping us lead county government.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I have two other I just need some clarification from the mayor on the stimulus fund.
Okay, Commissioner Brooks.
Yeah. The $2 million that the commission allocated on the front end to cover expenses for the funds, would that be reimbursed? Well, would it fit under the guidelines? Go ahead.
Yes, we believe so. But remember that the commission spent the money from our fund balance. So, but yes.
So that money would be able to go back into the fund balance, correct?
We believe so, yes.
Okay, and then secondly, the 13 jobs that were added, would it also fit within the expenditure for the stimulus? I can't hear you.
I wasn't part of the conversation today about the 13 jobs. I may have missed that, but suffice it to say, we will be hiring up to 60 temporary employees in the health department, for example, here soon. And so those kinds of jobs, yes, would be covered by the stimulus package.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Brooks. Again, Mr. Mayor, thank you for your presentation today. There are no other questions at this time. I'm sure we'll see you a little bit later in the day. Mr. Mayor, are you still there? I just have one other quick comment.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. We did not receive this until after community services adjourned. Actually, we just received it when general government opened. But let me just, in brief, just quick note, and if just so you can be aware, and I'm sure Dorcas is probably listening today, but Micah's Immigration and Intercultural Equity Task Force sent us a note today, and it's just asking on the Shelby County website for the Shelby County COVID-19 Emergency Relief Fund, if there are any plans for the application to be translated into other languages so that all Shelby County citizens, all Shelby County residents can have access. It's not noted on the website or the application itself, so maybe just something you and the division will consider, if you don't mind. It's good feedback for us, I guess.
Yeah,
oh, and also Dorcas is on the line. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, we've been in communication with Micah. I think we actually brought this to them, that if they could help us to develop a partnership for translation, we'd be glad to have that partnership. I don't think they have any Spanish language resources apparently right now. So we're going to start hunting for other Spanish language resources and try to get that information out. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and I've just been told by Director Griffin, the application is now in Spanish. Dorcas, do you mind just coming on the line so the commissioners can hear you?
Can you all hear me?
We can. Director Dorcas Young Griffin, just in regard to this question about can the Shelby County COVID-19 emergency relief funds, can they be in other languages? Can you just let us know about Spanish and any other plans for other languages?
Yes, sir. Good morning. Mayor Harris just mentioned about the fund. We have received almost 5,000 applications within the last 48 hours. So we have put a temporary pause on applications until we can process the ones that we have. We do currently have, we had the application in Spanish on yesterday when it was still available. And when we open back up, it will still be available online in Spanish. We are working with some of our partners to get it translated into other languages as well. So hopefully by the next time that we phase in doing this service again, we will have it online in several languages so that it is accessible to lots of folks.
Sorry. Director Young, thank you for the response. Mr. Mayor, thank you for the response. And again, we'll see the mayor later in the day. We may see you, Director, also. So thank you again. Can the parliamentarian please read item number, whatever that next number is for notaries, please?
Yes, sir. Item 1 is a resolution approving the election of notaries public for appointment and a reappointment for Shelby County, Tennessee, sponsored by Commissioner Mark Billingsley.
Do I have a motion and a second?
Moved by Morrison.
Second by Bradford.
Thank you. Do we have a report from the county staff? Is Megan on here, or Miss Hackney? Miss Stenbow?
Hold one moment.
Thank you. Ms. Woods, good afternoon. You have the floor.
Good afternoon. I have reviewed the applicants and found no commissioners, their spouses, or children on the list of applicants.
Would you state your name and position for the record?
Yes, Esther Sykes, Floyd County Attorney's Office.
Thank you so much. Seeing no commissioners with questions on this item, let's prepare the screens for voting.
Commissioner Turner,
Aye.
Harrison,
Aye.
Sawyer, Whaley,
Aye.
Aye.
Milton,
Aye.
Brooks,
Aye.
Bradford,
Yes.
Ford,
Aye.
Mills,
Aye.
Lowry, and Billingsley.
Aye.
Jones, aye.
Okay. We have aye votes from Commissioners Turner, Morrison, Whaley, Wright, Milton, Brooks, Bradford, Ford, Mills, Lowry, Jones, and Billingsley. We have 12 aye votes.
That motion passes. Thank you so much. It goes down with a favorable recommendation for Monday. Item number 2.
Item 2 is a resolution approving the Shelby County Government's compensation policy for fiscal year 2021, sponsored by Commissioner Mark Billingsley.
Do we have a mover and seconder?
I move.
Moved by Morrison.
Second by Bradford.
Very good. I have, it's been moved by Commissioner Brooks, seconded by Commissioner Bradford. To the administration, Mr. Massey, Director Massey, do you have a report, or anybody on the line that has a report?
Yes, sir. Good morning, Commissioner Billingsley and Commissioners. There should be a presentation that's attached. Can you all hear me?
Would you please state your name and position for the record?
Yes, Stephen Massey, Human Resources Administrator, Shelby County Government.
Thank you, Mr. Massey. And you say there's a presentation for us?
There should be a presentation attached.
Okay.
If not, I have a presentation that I can go over with commissioners.
Can you show it? Can you show it on the screen for us?
Let's see. I don't see a share
Please
screen option.
Please send the presentation to me. This is Karan. Thank
You could email that to.
The presentation was part of the documents, because I have a copy of it myself. So when you go to the supporting documents, it's right there. It's a PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Massey, go ahead.
We're not downstairs, and that's not how we're able to bring the system up any longer. So we
Okay.
we need the copy, the soft copy of the presentation sent, please. Thank you.
I just sent it to Karan, so she should have it.
Okay, very good. Stand by, commissioners, for the presentation. Commissioner Brooks, do you want to be recognized now, or you want to wait for the presentation?
Wait for the presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner Brooks. Commissioners, we'll have this up in just a second. We're not too far behind on time, so hopefully we can get this up and approved and then move on. Okay, Mr. Massey, it looks like Ms. Folsom's got it up. You've got the floor. And if you need Ms. Folsom to flip to another slide, just tell her.
Okay, you can go ahead and advance the slides. So good morning.
I'm sorry. So we're clear. Staff is handling this in the chamber. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Go ahead, Mr. Massey.
Yes, so good morning, commissioners. Good morning, Chairman. What we have before you today is our 2021 compensation plan proposal. We'll do a business case review. We'll look at data in reference to our current compensation plan, and then we'll go over some recommended changes to the plan. Want to start by sharing with everyone that this is a cost neutral plan for this year. So there is no funds being requested for the changes that we're recommending in this plan. Next slide. So in evaluation of our compensation plan, there's some obvious challenges that we've faced here historically. One of those challenges is the plan just hasn't been uniformly followed. It allowed for way too many exceptions. So anytime you have a large amount of exceptions to any kind of a plan or project or proposal, what it does, it basically deteriorates the effectiveness of that plan. And so one of the things that we'll be doing with some of our recommendations is bringing the plan back in alignment so there's more consistency of application of how we utilize this plan going forward. In addition, the plan as designed really doesn't assist us with acquiring high-performing talent, both externally and even from a promotional perspective. So some of the changes that we're recommending will help us, to one, identify, high-performing talent, that we can bring into the government, as well as promote within our internal organization. And lastly, one of the things that we recognize is kind of a double-edged sword. Although we're saying that there's too many exceptions, there was a great deal of rigidity in terms of how we administered the plan. And so what you will see is recommendations for more flexibility from the really internal HR compensation department perspective, so we can have greater flexibility of how we are devising compensation for open positions, promotions, and a way for us to mitigate some of the internal equity issues and pay compression issues that we're faced with. Next slide. This data chart shows our total compensation disbursement for, this is the end of 2019. And what this shows is by years of service and the percentage of pay in each employee's respective pay grade. So if you look at, the first column here where it has a 890 or 19%, what that represents is we have roughly 19% of our employees that are still at the minimum to 10% of their respective pay grade. And if you go down, look at some of the other bars in this particular graph, you'll see that we have about 170 employees that's been with us for 11 to 30 plus years that still are roughly making the minimum of their respective pay grade. That's where we're looking at when we're talking pay compression issues. That's a pay compression issue that at some point we need to find funding to deal with. part of the challenge part of the challenge that caused this pay compression issue is when we raised the rates to $15. So you now have temps and entry-level employees making the same money that somebody had been here for 10 to 30 plus years. So that is a challenge that we know that we need to deal with. When you look at the rest of the bars going from 11 to 100%, that's pretty relatively good pay distribution. We have a good portion of our employees that's in that 11 to 25% of their respective pay range, and so forth. But the other challenge that we see is at the end here, you have another 19% of our employees that have maxed out on their pay for their respective pay grade and position. So what happens when we do that, that constantly compounds pay challenges in our budget. We're constantly adding additional percentages of increases to our base pay rate. So we're going to recommend some changes to that particular area that will help to resolve that 19%. But that's a big pay challenge where we're constantly adding additional pay to base rates that have exceeded their maximum of their respective pay rate. Next slide. So in summary, we have about 26% of our employees that are still in entry-level positions. And we have heavy administrative positions when we look at our overall structure. And you'll see in the previous or upcoming slides where we're going to be recommending how we solve for some of that. 3% of our employees, is really that 170 employees that we have some immediate pay compression issues that at some point we need to figure out how to address that. We're not recommending making any changes to correct that for this particular compensation year, but it is a pay compression issue that we need to pay close attention to. Like I said, the other 19% is they have maximized, their pay. 26% of our employees right now are eligible for retirement. So when we think about institutional knowledge, when we think about business continuity, we are approaching an area where we're at risk. At 26% of our employees, if we had a large percentage of our employees leave our organization, it could create a great deal of instability. So some of the changes that we're recommending will help to curb some of that retirement that may be leaving, to door today. And then another 10% of our employees are turning over year after year. So about another 500 of our employees are actually leaving the organization. So, that's a pretty good percentage of employees that we have to ensure that, one, we're bringing in, qualified talent to replace. Two, we're considering how we structure our organization where we know that we have the right type of positions to carry out the operations that are before each elected official and each department. Next slide. So what we're going to be recommending in this particular compensation year is amendment to some pay practices. And then one of the things that we've been doing from an HR perspective is over the past 3 to 4 months, we've sat down with most of the elected officials and department leaders and start to look at how can we restructure organizations and how can we address pay compression and internal equity issues within their existing budgets, utilizing their existing complement of headcount. And so we have quite a few plans that we've had developed over the last 3 or 4 years that we can make a lot of the necessary changes inside our existing budgets to address and correct some of the pay compression issues and internal equity issues. Next slide. So the recommended changes that we're making for 2021 is as follows. One is our durational employees, which consist of contract, grant, and project employees. we are recommending that we change this to a unclassified status. Talking to some of our department leaders and department heads, this is a big challenge for us. When we look at grant-funded positions have very strict requirements, in terms of meeting the elements of that particular grant. A lot of them are on a time continuum. And so if we have performance issues, attendance issues, non-compliance issues, it's very difficult to change out the resources in that particular grant. So it puts, not only it puts Shelby County at risk for not meeting the obligation of that grant, but it also puts us in conflict with potentially even receiving additional funding out of that grant in the future. So by changing this to an unclassified position, it allows us to more immediately and effectively deal with non-performing talent that are placed in these grant-funded positions. Now, what we are going to be doing or proposing to do is those individuals that are currently in a grant-funded contract or project position, we would grandfather them in and they will maintain their classified status. But as of July 1, anyone hired into this position would be considered an unclassified employee. The next pay change that we are recommending is in Section 10 of the compensation plan, we have a bonus provision. Last year and currently it's been $1,000. We're recommending to raise that to $1,500. Last year we spent roughly $56,000 in bonus payouts. If you think about our current climate with COVID, this is a great way to recognize employees that truly have gone over and beyond the call of duty in response to the crisis that we're currently in. $1,500, again, it's not a large sum of money, but it is a decent acknowledgement of how we are recognizing and rewarding our employees that are truly going over and beyond the call of duty. Next slide. This third section is really critical. And I think this is where, when I talk about rigidity in our compensation plan, this is a way for us to address that. Currently, our pay philosophy primarily is to bring people in and promote people to the minimum of the pay range. Well, when you do that, you have a couple of challenges. One, it doesn't ensure that you're going to always get the most competitive. You're not going to get the most qualified talent for a respective position. You're restricting your ability to go out and identify and promote talent based on their experience, background, education, years of service. So by limiting to the minimum of the range, it really impacts our ability to be competitive in the marketplace. And when we think about the marketplace, it's just not other municipalities. What we're competing against are the FedEx of the world and the Nikes of the world and all the other, business industry that's in the area, especially when we're looking at industry-related positions like IT, finance, code enforcement area. Those are generic or general positions that are available across the entire county. So we have to be competitive, more competitive when we're out there identifying and selecting talent. So what we're going to do is have more flexibility internally in terms of setting pay, looking at internal equity as a big opportunity to ensure that we don't have pay compression issues. So it basically gives the HR team and the hiring manager more flexibility when designing salaries for promotions and external hires. With the caveat that we wouldn't bring anybody in over 50% of the pay range without the approval of myself and the CAO. So again, this particular provision gives us greater flexibility, and it mitigates some of the rigidity that we currently have in our pay structure. Next one is, you know, the red circle provision is the big piece that I really want to talk about here. That 19% of our employees that have exceeded the maximum of their pay range. Well, in comp practices, there's a provision called red circle. And what that means is once you've reached the maximum of your respective pay range, you're capped at that maximum. So if there's a general increase, instead of attaching additional general increase to your base wages, what we would do is provide you with a one-time lump sum for either a percentage or the entire percentage of that general increase. What that does is it helps us, you know, mitigate compounding our budget by adding that 2% or 3% on top of the base wage, and it allows us to begin to reduce, you know, our budget because we're not adding, you know, constantly that increase on top of base wages. So this is a common pay provision that, you know, most compensation plans have. We have not utilized this provision, and I think it is a way for us to mitigate that 19% of our employees that, you know, have exceeded their maximum of their pay range. Next slide. This section here, last couple of changes is for promotional increases. Previously and currently, we basically provide up to 5% promotional increase. Well, we've had cases where employees have turned down jobs because of the 5% increase really wasn't in line with the level of responsibility that we're asking them to do. So what we're saying is, in order to be more competitive and to make sure that we are targeting the right level of employee and the skill sets of the employees, we said that we will go up to 15%. Now that's not guaranteed. What we will still look at is internal equity. We will look at background. We will look at education. We'll look at all those factors that go into making up a pay decision. However, it gives us greater flexibility when we're actually identifying the right talent to come in from a promotional perspective. And then lastly, on our out-of-class pay. Out-of-class pay, currently, you have to work 60 days and then be considered for additional pay and out-of-class pay. What we are removing is that 60-day waiting period. There's times that we have immediate projects. If you think about, you know, again, our response to our current crisis, there's times that we have elevated projects. We're trying to fill open roles, and we can't afford to allow somebody to wait 60 days before they can get compensated to take on additional assignments. This is a way to recognize employees who truly is stepping in the gaps and providing services and recognizing them and paying them upfront. So removing that 60-day waiting period, I think we'll get more employees willing to step up to the plate and fill in gaps where we have emergency needs. Next slide. This basically concludes our presentation, and what we're asking the commissioners for is to approve the compensation plan for 2021. This has been approved by UPPC unanimously and also the Civil Service Board. We've had an opportunity to socialize this with a lot of the elected officials and department leaders, so we do have the majority of our constituents on board with this plan. Any questions?
Mr. Massey, great presentation. Want to thank you for your hard work on this. You just answered my question about, has this been gone through the UPPC group, and you said it has been supported strongly. So thank you for doing that in advance. And again, a very good presentation today. I thought the technology of showing your presentation and you speaking through it went really well. So thank you. I think the commissioners have just a few questions for you. Let me go to our first commissioner, Commissioner Willie Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Massey, for the presentation. Back in 2017, I served as the chairman of an ad hoc committee to look at the compensation for Shelby County, and some of these were the recommendations that came forward from the ad hoc committee. In reference to on page 5, I do have a question regarding the employees who are above range max. Are these exempt or non-exempt?
It's a combination of both.
Okay, and so are we adjusting salary ranges to compensate for people being over max? So when their increases are being provided on an annual basis, are we adjusting our salary ranges to reflect that?
So for this year, we're not proposing any adjustments to the salary ranges. We will take a look at that in 21-22. We wanted to go in with our existing salary ranges. We wanted to make these changes first. We do need to go in and take another look at salary ranges down the road. But I think we have to truly realign ourselves on basic pay practices and get some of our basic, practices in line in terms of how we are being consistent across the board with creating pay and looking at ways to mitigate and abate pay compression and internal equity issues. And that work is going to be done and is in the process of being done with the elected officials and department leaders as we've met with them one-on-one, and we have an idea of the issues and challenges that they have in their respective organizations, and we'll start to address those issues. But we're not going to change, we're not recommending changing structure this year. I think it is something that we will continue to look at and design a structure that will help us to mitigate that those individuals that are maximum of their pay range for 21-22.
Okay. And in reference to employees working out of class, would that require some administrative approval prior to working an employee out of class?
Absolutely. That approval process comes to me and my compensation team. So there's an adjustment. There's a justification that is provided. We review the justification, and then between my department and myself, we make that approval.
And I guess my follow-up question is for those elected officials who determine the salaries for their appointees, is that something that they still will have the jurisdiction over? Or is that something that will go through your office?
It's a combination. Although they have jurisdiction, what we're really trying to do is ensure that all parties are aligned with our compensation structure. We still have to maintain consistency. We don't want to get into a situation where we're paying one employee a rate significantly different than another employee that's doing relatively the same job. So we still will work very closely with the elected officials to ensure consistency inside our current comp structure.
Okay, and I guess my final question is, when you talk about compression adjustment between ICs and management, in some situations you may have where employees or ICs will have more experience or tenure in the job, therefore their pay could certainly be above the manager that's either being hired or being promoted into that position. And so how would you address that particular issue?
So one of the things that we will look at is making sure that there's a 15% difference in salary ranges between grades, between ICs and managers. So that's a structural change that we will need to look at. But part of that is when we're constructing salary offers, you have to look at all factors. You have to look at where does the salary align with the supervisor or manager, look at internal equity, look at education, skills, background, years of service. You have to take all of that in consideration when designing an actual salary offer. There are going to be scenarios where, a large tenured employee that's been here 20 plus years may be in a situation where they're just simply making more than their supervisor. There's not going to be a lot that you really can do with that. You just have to kind of take note of that and ensure that the supervisor is being paid appropriately. But you're going to have occasionally situations like that, but you won't write necessarily a policy that will cover every aspect of compensation challenges that you're going to be faced with.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes my questions, and I would like to be added as a sponsor.
Commissioner Brooks, really good questions. Thank you so much for your leadership on this. Commissioner Jones has made a motion to be added as a sponsor. Do I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Brooks. Commissioner Brooks has been asked to be a sponsor, and do I have a second?
Second by Bradford.
Thank you. Without objection. Thank you, Commissioner Brooks. Commissioner Jones has a question. Commissioner Jones.
Yeah, Chair, I said it. I just wanted to know, is this policy budget neutral?
Yes, sir.
Very good. Very good. Mr. Massey.
Yes, sir. This is a budget neutral policy. We're not asking any expenditures to be attached to this policy for this upcoming budget year.
All right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Very good. So commissioners, I see no one else wishing to be recognized. This has been amended, so let's take a vote on this resolution as amended. Thank you again, Mr. Massey.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Brooks.
Yeah, I would just like to encourage our HR administrator to work with our elected officials in relationship to these policy changes, and so we can all be on one accord.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I know you heard that, Director.
Yes, sir. And I do leave with it.
Thank you. Rosalind, we've got a handsome young man here on our screen. I don't think that's what we need.
No.
Is that your son?
No, that's Rhonda's granddaughter. Actually.
Okay, Rhonda, we need to.
So,
Very good.
Commissioner Turner,
Aye.
Morrison,
Aye.
Sawyer, Whaley,
Aye.
Wright,
Aye.
Milton,
Aye.
Brooks,
Aye.
Bradford,
Yes.
Ford,
Aye.
Mills,
Aye.
Lowry,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
and Billingsley.
Aye.
We have aye votes from Commissioners Turner, Morrison, Whaley, Wright, Milton, Brooks, Bradford, Ford, Mills, Lowry, Jones, and Chairman Billingsley. We have 12 aye votes.
That item passes with the favorable recommendation. Item number 4, which should be, is this, please, what number would this next item be, the discussion?
3.
Okay, please read item number 3. This should be our last item for general government.
Item 3 is a discussion item on voting machines purchased to last approximately 10 minutes.
Very good. We've asked Commissioner, our Administrator of Elections, Linda Phillips, to be with us today, Commissioners. So Linda Phillips should be on the line. Ms. Phillips, are you with us? We can see the screen. We just need Ms. Phillips.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, hey, good morning, Ms. Phillips. Would you please state your name and position for the record?
Certainly. I'm Linda Phillips. I'm the Administrator of Elections.
Very good. Good to see you this morning. You have the floor.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm hard at work like other units of government. Elections are also receiving COVID-19 funds. And so my presentation, my budget proposal to the state is due today, but I expect that we will receive about $850,000 in funding that's intended to cover some of the additional things that we'll have to spend. We're anticipating a huge increase in absentee by mail. So that means more postage, more workers, more ballots, more envelopes. So that's going to be a huge part of the budget increase. We're also looking at disposable pens, disposable styli, a wide variety of things. So that 850,000 should alleviate some of the county's financial burden for changing the way we do elections. I did want to share with you that the resolution that you all passed at your last meeting is really not a feasible approach for Shelby County. And one of the things that I don't know that I apparently have not made clear to you all is why election administrators generally prefer ballot marking devices because of the wide range of voter error. So if you could flip to the next slide. So anyway, I have always strongly believed that the one place where people should be absolutely equal is in the voting booth. Next slide. And people aren't perfect, though. Ballots marked by hand often contain mistakes, and these errors can be overvotes. A person voted for more than the number of candidates allowed. They can be stray marks. A voter writes or draws something on the ballot that invalidates or prevents the machine from reading it. Unclear marks. The voter doesn't fill in the oval, or they make marks that can't be deciphered. Blank ballots is a fairly common problem on hand-marked paper ballots. And undervotes. And undervotes is where a voter does not choose to vote in a race, and that's intentional and that's okay. But an undervote can also be an error if the voter just didn't notice the race on the ballot. So, next slide. So anyway, since it was time for us to dispose of the ballots from the May 2018 election, we pulled out the voter marked paper ballots. Each one of the 1,088 ballots was examined for ballot error. For the purposes of this study, we ignored undervotes. While those may be errors, they might also have been the voter's choice. And we sorted the ballots by precinct and then assigned a predominant zip code to each precinct. We use zip codes because people are generally more familiar with the location of zip codes than the location of precincts. We then analyzed whether ballot error was distributed across the county. Next slide. So the countywide voter error rate was 4.4%. Of those 1,088 ballots, 4.4 of them had fatal errors in one or more races. Next slide. So there were 5 precincts that had very little voter error, in fact, 0. And that's, 162 ballots. And see those zip codes where those ballots came from? Next slide, please. And these are the precincts with the most amount of voter error. So, from my standpoint, I think it's kind of unconscionable to advocate for a system that creates such widely disparate results across our county when we have the tools and we have the technology available to help people do a better job voting. Now, as some of the specifics in your recommendation, voting on ballot on demand at polling places is only used in a handful of counties across the United States. And it doesn't work very well. The last county that tried it was St. Louis County, Missouri, and in their last election went to ballot on demand, and they're about a little bit larger than Shelby County, similar number of polling places. They had 68 of their election day polling places that didn't open on time because they couldn't get the ballot on demand printers to work. I think that's completely unacceptable. And certainly, if we go to paper ballots, they really need to be pre-printed. We will take safety precautions. We're using disposable pens. But expecting our 1,400 of our friends and neighbors who are our poll workers to set up 700 printers between 6 a.m. and 7 a.m. is not realistic. So I'd be happy to have and take anyone's questions.
Ms. Phillips, thank you so much for your presentation. I'm very grateful. before I go to the questions in the queue, I'm going to ask you probably the easiest question of the day that you'll have is, my entire life, I've gone to the either early voted or gone on election day to vote. And so I've never had the need to vote by mail. But with the coronavirus, I think to your point, we are going to see a lot of people that want to mail in their ballots. For example, for me, for someone who has never needed that or wanted that, I've always enjoyed going on election day or even early voted and going into the box there and selecting my candidates. For someone like me who may be quarantined right now or doesn't feel comfortable going to a location, how would I get a ballot to mail through the mail?
Well, you can go to shelbyvote.com, and under the voters tab, there's a section called absentee, and you can pull off the absentee application. It's not available yet because under Tennessee law, we can only accept those applications 90 days prior to the election. So on May the 8th, the first day that we can accept them, that'll go up on our website. You need to pull the form down. It's a fillable PDF, print it, because it does take a real signature, digital signature, and then you can either mail it to us, you can fax it, or you can email it. The directions are on the form. And you check one reason, and you put the reason, why you would choose to vote absentee. In Tennessee, it does take a reason. If you're under age 60, if you're over age 60, you are automatically entitled to vote by mail. And you mail that to us. And then we will mail you a ballot. Ballots are not generally mailed until around 30 days prior to the election.
Very good. And once I sign up for that and I receive, again, I'm just going to ask you some very generic questions. Assuming that a lot of people may not have voted through the mail before. Once I fill that out and I get the ballot, as long as I don't send that ballot in, I can still choose to go to a precinct as long as I haven't mailed in that ballot. Is that true?
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
Technically, under Tennessee law, once you have requested an absentee ballot, that's the only way you can vote.
Okay.
However, if you didn't get the ballot or you didn't fill it out, you can go to a polling place on election day or even early voting, but you have to vote provisionally. So I would only recommend asking for a mail-in ballot if you truly want to vote by mail, because the provisional process will take another 30 minutes of your time on election day.
My last question, and then I'm going to go to my colleagues. And again, I just want to thank you, Director Phillips, for your presentation today. I think it went very well. Just one moment. Let me do this. Let me go to the screen first, and then I'll come back. First up is Commissioner Van Turner. Commissioner Turner, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Administrator Phillips. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. My first question is, again, you said that there's a mail-in ballot option, and for those under 60, they would need a reason. And what is quarantine or COVID-19 currently a reason to request an absentee ballot if you are under age 60?
Yes, being quarantined would fall under the category of being hospital ill, physically disabled, and unable to vote in person.
Okay, what if you're not quarantined, but you don't want to catch the virus? Is there a category for an individual who wants to socially distance as a result of fear from catching COVID-19?
Not under current Tennessee law. However, I can say that we are taking enormous precautions with our polling places and our workers. Our workers will have masks and gloves. We've ordered sneeze shields. We've ordered disposable pens, disposable styli, if we're using the same machines we're currently using. So a voter really is not going to be a great deal of risk. We're going to have to move some polling places where they are too small to be socially distanced, but they'll be in the same precinct or as nearby as we can find a larger building. So based upon the experience we saw in Wisconsin's primary in early April, they took the same kinds of precautions we're planning to take. And we have not seen an increase in COVID-19 cases as a result of that.
So I know the Election Commission, Norris County government have the ability to go out and test theoretically every individual that says they have to be quarantined because they may, through a contact trace, have come in contact with someone that has the virus. So if a person simply checks if they're under 60 that they are quarantined because they've, through contact tracing or otherwise, come in contact with someone who's tested positive, that appears that would suffice, because if a person says that they're quarantined, that means they don't have the virus. But if they've contact tracing has shown that they've come in contact with someone with the virus, I think the protocol still is to quarantine and don't go out.
Yeah, and we're not going, realistically, it's going to be a stretch to have enough staff to process the mail applications. We're not going to, check up and get a doctor's excuse. We're going to, if someone says they're ill, we're going to believe them because they're signing the name to this form saying that everything that they have put on it is true.
Now, I want to flip that question. You say your workers are going to have masks and everything is going to be scrubbed down. Will all the workers be tested who are at the election polls and coming into contact with individuals who are coming in to vote? Will they be tested?
Yes, they will be. Well, I don't know that they will have blood tests, but there are screening questions that they will be asked. So both for when they come in for training and when they come in to work on election morning, the officer will ask them questions.
Yeah, I understand that, but will they be tested? Because you can still have the virus and not show any type of symptoms, and you can still pass the virus on. So will the election workers during the early voting stage and on election day be tested for the virus?
I really don't have an answer for that right now. It would be desirable if we have the testing capacity in Shelby County. I'd really like to know that. But again, I think that's more of a question that we need to work out with the health department.
I think, Chairman, you raised your finger.
I just a quick mulligan, my friend. I think it's a good question. When you say testing, like on election day or when people are coming in, like I've been in and out of the emergency command center. So when I come in, I sign in, and they take my temperature. Is that what you're referring to, or do you want everyone tested 2 weeks out? Because again, it's just a question to you, Commissioner Turner, because of course you won't have instant results of people working in there. So I think it's a very good question, and I think we deserve an answer from the health department. But are you referring to like a temperature check or the full-blown test? And how would that work? Like, because you could be tested on Friday and then arrive for the Monday voting, and over the weekend you could have gotten it. So
right.
I'm trying to understand. And again, I'm supportive of what you're proposing. I just want to understand how we ask the health department that.
Yeah, and I know we have a health department presentation on later, and I think that's a good question for Dr. Haushalter, because early voting takes place over a 2-week period. So theoretically, those same workers will be appearing at the polling precincts for 2 weeks. And the first week, they may not have it, but they may have done some over the weekend and gotten the virus. So the second week, they may have the virus. So I think that's something we do need to ask Director Haushalter when we come to her presentation. How do we address election day workers, especially not so much election day, that's easily controllable, but on early voting, what do we do over that 2-week span to ensure that people are safe? I know, let me wrap up, Mr. Chairman. I know this is running a little long.
Commissioner Turner?
Yeah.
Hey,
Oh.
since this is very relevant, we have Ms. Phillips here, we have you. Dr. Househalter's on the line. Do you mind if we go ahead and let the
Yeah.
health director address this voting question?
Mhm.
Everyone hear me? Okay?
Yeah, Dr. Househalter, you have the floor.
Okay, Elisa Househalter, Director of the Shelby County Health Department. The thing to keep in mind about testing is that an individual may test negative one day and be positive another day. So typically testing is not recommended. What would be recommended is the screening at the time that people enter the polling site, and then all of the other preventive measures that were already identified. Wearing of masks by those who are working in the polling sites, but we would also encourage the public who's coming in to wear a facial covering, whether that's a mask or a cotton covering of some sort. Clearly the wearing of gloves and appropriate cleaning of all of the surfaces. To do testing might give a false sense of security that would not be accurate, given that people could become positive at a later time.
Okay. So, Dr. Householder, are you saying to screen the workers and the individual voters as they come into the precinct?
You want to screen the individual workers for temperatures as well as signs and symptoms. I don't know how easy it would be to try to screen all of the people coming in to vote. In an ideal world, you would want to do both. But if people are masked and their time there is limited and there is social distancing, then you could be comfortable with screening of employees primarily or volunteers. But ideal would be to do both if that can be worked out.
Okay.
We'll see what we can do. But definitely, yes, we will screen the employees.
And if we can be of assistance, feel free to reach out to me, and either myself or Dr. Randolph will work with you to try to provide whatever assistance you need to be able to, assure that people can safely vote.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Director Householder and Mr. Chairman. Madam Administrator Phillips, I'll start wrapping up. On the for the under 60 to do the mail-in ballots, that's something that I really just learned this morning. What steps will be taken to really educate the public on that? I didn't know why. I'm not over 60, so I would not have known about over 60, but under 60, if you are quarantining and you can do a mail-in ballot, how are we going to get that out to the public who may still be fearful of COVID-19, but still want to vote? Are y'all going to do an aggressive PR campaign? And if so, are there dollars that you have allocated to do so prior to, I think you said we can start requesting those really on May 8th, which is really a couple of weeks away now.
We are doing some locally, but the Secretary of State's office will be doing, I believe their plan is to do a statewide mailing to households with registered voters to get that information out to them. There'll also be public service announcements, social media campaigns. So we will do as much as we are able. And as I said, the Secretary of State's office is handling the bulk of that.
Okay, final two questions here. I think you indicated before, and I think you even had a request to discard the current Diebold machines because they were outdated. And that's why you, I think, have spent the better part of this past year working out your process to get new voting equipment. So, and I know that there's a bid out, and you've actually advocated for the BMDs, the ballot marking devices yourself, I believe. And you've indicated that the current voting equipment is outdated. So where are we now on that RFP process as far as discarding the current Diebold machines, and where are we with the new voting equipment?
Well, the proposals have been requested and they've been analyzed, and the Election Commission is going to meet under the process in Shelby County. They have to have an an executive session where the proposals are discussed in detail, and then they will go into a public meeting where they can't reveal any of the details, but they will make a public deliberation and a public vote. And then that goes to the purchasing department, who will begin the process of issuing the intent to award letter.
All right,
So
thank you.
I'm hoping that's next week.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Turner, really good questions, really good questions. You know, this is all so new. And it's certainly going to require some things we've never faced before in an election. Commissioner Michael Whaley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, my questions were already answered, so appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Whaley. Commissioner Edmund Ford, you have the floor.
All right, this is my first time up. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I just got one comment and one question. Ms. Phillips, good morning. Can you hear me? Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Okay, there you are. Okay. Look, I'll just say, I appreciate your due diligence on this item, as I believe that the integrity of our elections is of paramount importance. I say that because when we've had our conversations, I appreciate your candor and your experience, even when we disagree. I will honestly say that I'll take your experience on these matters each time. And I say that because you got former county commissioners who want attention. You got these interest groups that want to come out, and then you got these perennial candidates who don't know how to get first place in their elections, but they want to be the experts now in our elections. Chairman, I also say this: when we have people that want to have public comment who live in Florida and other states, but they're worried about what we're doing in Shelby County, they live in Florida. They need to mind their own business. I just have one question. And I want to reiterate why I voted no on that resolution, because I think there's going to be costs that we have to have. And if we have to modify things accordingly, the integrity of our elections should be of paramount importance. So I just want to get you on record one more time. Out of all documented voter fraud cases, what % of those cases had a paper ballot system in place in those cities or states?
100% of voter fraud to date has been committed on paper.
That's all I need you to articulate, Chairman. That's all I have.
Ms. Phillips, to that last question that Commissioner Ford shared, do you mind sending me, and might as well send it to all the commissioners, do you mind sending me and the other commissioners just the backup for that? Again, I've tried to be as open-minded as I can about this entire process, but I think that speaks volumes. So if you don't mind emailing that, just any documentation or best practices as it relates to that, I would be very, very grateful.
I'd be happy to do that, although I've got to finish this grant because it's due by 5 o'clock today. So it's going to be tomorrow.
You do the grant. You do that. Yes, please do the grant. And you may have answered this for another commissioner, but let me just ask one more time. With the coronavirus funds that you'll receive, I think you are going to see a lot of absentee ballots for people that don't feel comfortable going out. So will any of that money, Ms. Phillips, be for a public relations campaign to let people know that absentee ballots are available for people like me who've never done that before, but I may choose to send in my ballot for the first time in my life if I don't want to go to a physical location where I have to be close to a lot of people? Is any of the coronavirus money so you can have maybe a little louder voice?
I have put a budget, a line in budget for that. We'll see how much funding we get. So
okay.
That would be a lower that would be a lower priority for me, since I know the Secretary of State is doing some of that, than say having additional staff to process absentees. If we're going to have, we're going to spend another $150,000 on postage, more than I had planned and budgeted. So
that makes a lot of sense.
We'll do the best we can. We'll do the best we can with the dollars we get. So.
Okay. Well, Commissioner Phillips, we're running out of time, but Commissioner Brooks has not been recognized. So I'm going to recognize Commissioner Brooks, and then a very quick follow-up. by Commissioner Turner, and then I'm going to adjourn this discussion. So Commissioner Willie Brooks, you have the floor, and then a brief closeout by Commissioner Van Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good morning, Ms. Phillips.
Good morning.
I had to step away from my computer, but I was looking at the 5 precincts with the most amount of voter error, and of course, 3128 it falls in my district. Could you elaborate on the type of errors that was found?
Well, of the ballots that were in that, they would be generally they would have been stray marks. They would have been overvotes. That would be if it was a vote for one candidate, they selected 2 candidates. They made stray marks. They could have had a blank ballot. That's pretty common. So it's that sort of error. I call them fatal errors. What that does is invalidates that vote in one or more races on that ballot.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. And to that same point, when a person does the absentee ballot, that's on paper as well.
It is.
And so if a person is sick and can't go to the actual ballot place to vote and they have to vote on paper, has there been any study or any type of study by you to look at absentee balloting that's also done on paper?
Okay, because I didn't know what the format was.
No, that actually would be illegal under Tennessee law. The ballots that come in have to remain sealed in their secrecy envelopes until they're counted by the absentee counting board on election day. But by the time the ballot is open, it is anonymous. We have no idea who has voted it. So that if there is voter error on those ballots, then there's voter error.
Right. So, and to that point, if so the person who's voting absentee by paper is already something that we're able to do. It just hopefully we'll get that message out to a wider audience that they can vote on paper by mail, and they can start doing that by May 8th.
Well, they can apply by May 8th. Our materials that we're sending out, as we're making very clear to everybody, they shouldn't look for their ballot until about the first week in July, because there's this urban legend that you send it in and then we're going to mail you a ballot the next day. Well, ballots aren't ready yet, so you will get a ballot, but it'll be later.
My final point here: didn't you at one time yourself advocate for ballot marking devices? Could you again explain to all the commissioners the core difference between the ballot marking device and the paper balloting, just so we are clear? Because I thought the ballot marking device involves some paper as well.
Yes, both systems produce a record of how the voter voted. And both systems, really the only difference between the two systems is how the ballot is marked. In one case, a machine marks it and prevents the voter from overvoting, doesn't allow stray marks, or if the voter marks it by hand, but then it goes into exactly the same precinct level scanner. It's tabulated by exactly the same software, no matter whether it's marked by hand or whether it's marked by machine. It's exactly the same back-end system. So really the only difference is that how the ballot gets marked.
Yeah.
Ballot marking devices tend to remove voter error.
And you've advocated for the ballot marking device.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Thank
under federal law, there will be a ballot marking device at every precinct and every early voting location, because we do have to provide that for voters who have physical disabilities.
Right. Understood. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Turner, for all the good questions. Ms. Phillips, you've done a great job today. It's so good to see you. Thank you for your presentation today. Anything the commission can do to support your efforts in this upcoming election, please let us know. If we can be a voice to the community about absentee ballots or anything with the upcoming election, please let us know, because there's nothing more important than our ability to vote, and just hope everyone will participate in the upcoming election.
I hope so too. Thank you.
Thank you, and good luck on that grant request.
I'm going back to it right now. So
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Commissioners, I do not see any other business before general government. Thank you for your patience today, and thanks for your really great questions. We now go to committee number 6 with education with Chairman Michael Whaley.
All right, good morning, everyone. Want to call to order committee number 6, education. If we could read item number 1.
Yes, sir. Item 1 is a discussion item. First 8 quarterly report to last approximately 10 minutes with LeAmber Hill, compliance manager, presenting.
All right, very good. Thank you. I believe we also have Candace Thomas on the line, who is the new executive director for First 8. I know, just speaking as board representative for First 8, very excited to have Candace with us. She's got many, many years of experience in both early childhood education and also philanthropy, most recently serving with the Irving Harris Foundation in Chicago for the last 14 years, I think. So always very excited to have talented people coming to our city and county. And with that, want to turn it over to Candace and LeAmber for the second quarter report from First 8.
Well, thank you so much, Commissioner Whaley. Can everybody hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. Thank you for the introduction and for giving First 8 Memphis the opportunity to present Q2 data with you this morning. And most of all, thank you for your investment in Shelby County's young children. We really look forward to growing this work with you and growing the momentum in the next few years. Next slide, please. So as you may remember, I'll tell you a little bit about myself in a second, but as you may remember, First 8 Memphis was created to really work to implement Shelby County's first early care and education system for children ages birth to 8. We are working to ensure that 90% of Shelby County's young children are kindergarten ready, and by 3rd grade, 90% of your children are reading at 3rd grade level by 2025. So next slide, please. I am brand new to Memphis. This is my actual 3rd week in Shelby County, and this is my 4th week at First 8 Memphis. I'm excited to be here and to have just moved to Memphis even during the pandemic. It's been a smooth transition despite all of the other conditions of the world. I am going to speak to the First 8 Memphis Q2 data this morning, but I may not be able to answer all of your questions or may not be able to address all of your comments. So my colleague LeAmber Hill is on the line, and I believe I have a couple of other colleagues on the line, Jenny Renfro and maybe Mark Sturgis. So I'm hoping that with any questions or comments, they're able to also chime in and help me out, since this is my 4th week in the job. So next slide, please. So as you know, pre-K is such an important investment in Shelby County's future. It really gives young children the opportunity to learn. Sorry? Okay.
Sorry, no, go ahead. I think there may be someone not on mute.
Okay. So pre-K really gives young children the opportunity to learn, for them to be creative, and to gain the social emotional skills needed to help navigate the rest of their school career and life. I'm going to share on behalf of First 8 Memphis data related to our pre-K, the Shelby County pre-K program, Q2 enrollment and attendance. Your investment actually in pre-K has already helped so much in Shelby County's early care and education system. And really, without your investment and the coordination that is happening with First State Memphis, we would actually not have the data that we have today. We wouldn't have the attendance and enrollment data without already this first years of investment. So typically you would of course want to share data and be able to compare to last year or prior year's data so you can really see how well are we actually doing. But unfortunately, because it wasn't required for pre-K operators and teachers to take attendance, for example, prior to the pre-K program that's First State Memphis is helping to implement and administer, we actually can't compare last year to this year, but we can compare the first quarter of the school year with the second quarter of the school year. So the next slide just really shows our overall enrollment numbers for this year and this quarter. And most importantly, you'll see that there was an increase in enrollment for quarter 2 compared to quarter 1. So as of December 20th, or the end of quarter 2, a total of 1,223 students, or 90% of children, sustained their enrollment in pre-K. So that's really good news. But for attendance, our data looks a little bit different. Next slide, please. So as you may know, attendance in pre-K is considered satisfactory when students attend at least 90% of total school days in any given quarter. So for the second quarter of this academic year, we actually saw a decrease in attendance. And just to clarify, the second quarter is from October through December. So as you know, there was Thanksgiving, Christmas holidays, and that's some of the contributing factors to a decrease in attendance. I also understand that there was that Shelby County had higher flu cases in this winter than in other places across Tennessee, and that may also contributed to lower attendance. So we did experience in quarter 2 a decrease in attendance compared to quarter 1. But there are a lot of resources and supports available for children and families. Next slide, please. So First State Memphis is working with Porter Leaf and other pre-K operators to really try to address some of the barriers related to low attendance. For instance, we have helped operators ensure that they have access to washer and dryers in some of their pre-K locations. We have been able to support to ensure that families have access to rideshare services. We've been able to support families in need of necessary clothing or coats during the wintertime. And also we've been really able to help support and link families to access to any other community resources, especially financial assistance and utility bill support. So all of these things we hope will increase attendance going forward and also increase enrollment in our pre-K classrooms. So next slide, please. So overall, as you all know, the city and county awarded $11 million to support pre-K classrooms in Shelby County. Thus far, those $11 million have been spent with allocating about $3 million to fund 66 pre-K classrooms. The $3 million can be broken down by $1.6 million paid out to the 21 First State Memphis non-finance classrooms and $1.4 million paid out to 49 First State Memphis finance classrooms. So we are in the process of dispersing the remainder $8 million throughout the end of this academic year and into the fall. As some of you know, some of the pre-K assessment and school readiness assessment will occur in the fall. And so our major expenditures, especially given that some of these payments are related to the Pay for Success model, those expenditures will be distributed in the fall and winter. So that includes this $8 million noted here. So for our next steps, next slide, please. First State Memphis, we will be supporting, reporting on Q3. So we will do that soon. And so you'll have an update on the third quarter of the academic year. And we're also coordinating to report our annual report to you and trying to figure out the dates for that. Our annual report obviously will include any year-to-date reporting and updates on First State Memphis's progress, fiscal report, an update and an overview of First State Memphis's COVID-19 response, and recommendations to the county for the budget for 2021 academic year. Next slide, please. So while we have the important investment from the city and county, First State Memphis also continues to work to raise resources from the for our broader 0 to 8 strategy. And so we are working to leverage significant investments from private foundations and private entities who are really interested in leveraging the investments from the public, from yourself and from the city. And so we have been invited as a finalist for the Pritzker Children Initiative Innovation Challenge. Pritzker Children Initiative is based in Illinois, where I just moved from. We have applied for major expansion of home visiting services and the integration of a 2-generation strategy through the state's DHS grant program. And we're also really looking at investments from the state and local philanthropy to launch shared services childcare strategy Next Memphis. So that is our update. Next slide, please. Thank you so much for your time this morning. And most importantly, obviously your investment and your commitment to Shelby County's young children. You know, we really strongly believe that, and we've seen so far that your continued investment will really help transform the lives of children and families in Shelby County. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas, for that report and for being 3 weeks in. Very good. So thank you for that. I did have a couple of questions, and if other commissioners have questions too, feel free to pop into the chat or jump on the screen. But one just clarifying question is on the 11 million in funding, that's inclusive of some of the City of Memphis funds, is that right?
Yes, I believe so. Leamber, tell me if I'm wrong, but I understand that it's 8 million from the county and 3 million from the city makes up the 11 million.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. And then on the financed classrooms, from what you see, are the expectations that have been laid out for those particular classrooms, I mean, are they tracking as expected to hit those benchmarks?
I believe so. You know, there are obviously the sort of the academic assessment that was implemented in the fall is typically implemented again in the spring toward the end of the school year. So given that we've had some changes to the school year, we don't have the complete school year data. But as of now, given the data that we have through February, young children in those financed classrooms are doing as expected in terms of doing well and improving.
Great. Thank you for that. And just one last thing that I would say it looks like you hit on this for the annual report that we'll do in June. Probably our first committee in June is when you talk about the update with regard to COVID-19 and how First State is addressing that with pre-K operators. If we could also discuss, because I think one of the issues that came up with us last year was around enrollment and how to make sure that we are maximizing the slots that we have available as we seek to try to expand the number of available slots. And so it's great to see such strong enrollment numbers, but I think it would be great to get an update on how you might be able to continue that or ensure that we continue that going into next year in light of a lot of uncertainty, you know, that we've been talking about over the months to come, what kind of recruitment might look like or will look like from now through the summer. If you wouldn't mind including that in that next report, that would be great.
Yes, we will do that. I've noted that. And Commissioner Whaley, let me just confirm one thing, that actually the finance classrooms, the program is actually outperforming the expected outcomes based on the historic data. So we're actually doing really well in our finance classrooms.
Okay, well, that's great to hear. Well, seeing no other questions on the board, just again want to thank you for the presentation, for your work, and for your commitment to Memphis and Shelby County and to early childhood here. And think what you're able to do and lead in this program is really can be a leader for what we can do across the country. So excited to see the work continue and grow. Thank you again. We are very much unified in our support of quality pre-K, and the more that we can expand quality options for kids, I think the better. So thank you again.
Thank you so much.
All right, very good. Seeing no other items before education, we will now conclude committee number 6. I think next up we have hospitals and health.
Madam Parliamentarian, I'm not seeing Chairman Turner. Do you want to go ahead and read the first item? We can't hear you, Madam Parliamentarian.
I'm sorry, my connection went out and I had to restart. Okay. Item number 1 is an update COVID-19 pandemic in Shelby County, Tennessee, to last approximately 30 minutes with Dr. Elisa Haushalter, Shelby County Health Department Division Director, presenting.
Thank you. And I appreciate you, Commissioner Wright. So without further ado, let's turn it over to our Director Haushalter. As always, thank you for the fine job you're doing. We really appreciate everything. We know it's a lot of work, but you're handling very well, and we thank you as always. Director Haushalter.
Good morning, Elisa Haushalter, Director of the Shelby County Health Department. And I'm going to keep my comments brief this morning, in part because I do the press conference at noon. So I will need to make it to the library by noon. So I apologize for that ahead of time. I also want to echo the sentiments of the mayor earlier. I really appreciate your recognition and support of our team members. Not only are there 100 people working 7 days a week, many of them are coming from areas that are quite different than what they're currently doing and have learned new skills or had to apply old skills to new settings. So I really appreciate your recognition of that, and they always appreciate the lunch. The updates I want to provide today really are where we are relative to reopening, and specifically where we are in our cases and the number of cases that we have. So as of this morning, we have 2,403 cases. That's an increase of 45 from yesterday. We've actually been still increasing in numbers cumulatively, because clearly there's more every day, but the proportion or the exponential growth has been downward trending now for some days, with the exception of this past weekend. We did extensive testing at 201 Poplar. There was also testing at a youth facility and some testing at nursing homes, as well as a surge testing in the community, and that caused our numbers to go up quite a bit over the weekend. But in general, we've been trending downward over the last 10 days or so. To date, we've had 46 deaths, and the average age of those who have passed away from COVID is 71. And the importance of that is our continued need to focus on protecting vulnerable populations, particularly our seniors and individuals in nursing homes. But I will note that our range of age for death has been as young as 27 and as old as 95. So all ages are impacted, but again, the average is around 71 years of age. We've begun reporting the number of individuals that have recovered. So over 50% of people who have contracted COVID that live in Shelby County have recovered. That's 1,205 individuals. And recovery is considered once 21 days have passed. And if an individual has not passed away as a result of COVID, then they're listed as having recovered. Some of them may continue to have side effects over time. If you listen nationally, the long-term sequelae are still not clear on COVID. So there will be some further follow-up on individuals who have COVID in the years to come. If we look at our proportion of cases, still approximately 70% of our cases are African American and 24% Caucasian. And we have about a 6% Latino population as well. Our cases continue to be in a young, healthy population, but over weeks, we're seeing more movement into our senior population. Some of that is a reflection of the nursing home clusters that we're working. We have a significant number of nursing homes that have 2 or more cases. And once there's 2 or more cases, that's considered an outbreak or a cluster in those particular areas. Our priorities continue to be to reinforce social distancing. What we've seen is a sort of a pretty good compliance with social distancing. And then about a week and a half ago, the measures showed that people weren't distancing as much, but now people are back to distancing significantly. And that's going to continue to be a priority area as we move towards opening. One of our other key priorities is very quick identification of people who have COVID, so that's testing. We have worked with our community testing committee to expand testing significantly. In addition to that, both Walgreens and Kroger's have come online to do testing. And then while we haven't been doing much testing at the health department, we've primarily focused on outbreaks. We're looking at how we can do testing in our clinics, particularly for our satellite clinics, for example, in Millington and Collierville. The community testing sites are not expected to expand out that far into the county immediately. So it's likely the health department will take up that responsibility given that we already have clinics there. As far as contact tracing, that's the other critical element, is that we are continuing to get test results now really within 24 to 48 hours. That's a significant improvement over the first month or so that we had cases. And so we are generally able to close out about 75% of those contact investigations quickly. And any day we have over 1,000 to 1,500 individuals who are being monitored. We are also monitoring the positivity rate, and we tend to run an average of a little bit under 10%. The significance of that is if you compare to communities like New York that has a 20 to 25% positivity rate, that's an indication of significant community transmission in New York. What we know is if we have less than 10%, we are likely testing the right individuals, and that while we have community transmission, it's not as significant as some other communities. We're focusing very heavily on our clusters, so that's specifically nursing home clusters as well as community clusters. You may have heard we've identified a social and geographic cluster in 38118. So we are doing some targeted outreach to that community through education, and we'll also be offering more targeted testing in that community. Then I wanted to spend a little bit more time on 201 Poplar. Today at the noon press conference, I'll have a little bit more detail, and also Sheriff Bonner is going to join me at noon so we can talk more about the efforts underway there. What we know at 201 Poplar is that we had a number of sheriff's officers who have tested positive over time, really from the beginning of our outbreak. And then about a week to a week and a half ago, we began to see increasing numbers amongst those who are detained at 201 Poplar. I requested assistance from the state health department, asking them to send an epidemiologist to help us really do identification of best practices beyond what we were already doing, because significant efforts were already put in to really prevent entry into the system. But once it enters the system, really strong efforts to try to reduce transmission. So on Friday, we estimated we were going to test about 400 to 450 people. We actually tested 266. Out of that 266, about 50% of those were positive, around 137, which gives us a total of 155 overall within the facility that have tested positive. We are working very closely with the sheriff and his team. We have a team dedicated to the jail. We met yesterday, we'll be meeting again today to further look at what else we need to do to reduce transmission within the jail. The state health department will also provide ongoing assistance. So I wanted you to be aware of that and know that there's more to come. This is an exceptionally vulnerable environment. We've known that and again, have put many efforts in place. But once we know that there is COVID within a correctional facility, it does spread very quickly. It's about 3 times more infectious than the flu, and we know how quickly the flu spreads. So we'll continue to work in that specific area. The other thing that people are really interested is when we anticipate that we can open up. Everyone's aware of the back to business plan. We being the health department are monitoring the data closely. We're looking at the positivity rate, which I mentioned earlier, the hospitalization rate, that's individuals who are hospitalized for COVID or suspected to have COVID. We know about 20% of those individuals will go on to actually be positive. And then we're looking at the day over day trend on the increasing number of cases. We will be meeting with, we met with mayors yesterday. We'll be meeting with mayors again, either late this afternoon or early tomorrow to come up with a better prediction on when we anticipate that we can be able to say that we can move into phase 1 comfortably. And we fundamentally believe we're very close. We know social distancing has worked. And so we want to continue to focus on social distancing, really focusing heavily on those clusters and our targeted outreach to vulnerable communities and communication to those particular communities. So I'm going to pause there. I want to make sure I leave sufficient time for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Haushalter, and we know that you do have to run to that meeting, your press conference, so we'll work to get you out of here. I'm going to the screen here. I think I've posted the first 2 questions, and I'll ask the commissioners if you have questions to go ahead and post those now or to put your webcam on so we can recognize you. My first question, Dr. Haushalter, I think you answered the question about the inmates, and I appreciate that. I emailed that to you, and just so the listening public knows, that was a question from Micah, who they've really advocated on this issue, and they've been on top of it. And I forward that question from Micah to you, and I appreciate you answering that, Dr. Haushalter. The second question here is, can COVID-19 funds be used for voter education due to social distancing regarding mail-in voting? You were on the line a little bit with Administrator Phillips. Do you know right offhand if we can use, I guess, that CARES Act money for any type of voter education as we try to vote through the pandemic crisis?
Well, that funding can be used for overall communications and targeted communications. So I'm going to make an early assumption the answer would be yes. And that's part of what we can work with the Election Commission on, is what are the key talking points and how do we get the message out to voters to not only engage in social distancing, but what their options are for voting. But I'll do a little bit more exploration to confirm that. But my original response would be yes, because we're targeting many constituents with COVID-19 messages.
That's great. And according to Administrator Phillips' timeline, May 8th is the first date that individuals can request mail-in balloting. And so, I mean, if something can be done in the near future, that would be good to at least make individuals aware of the May 8th start time to request mail-in ballots for the August election. And a second question here, is it possible to set up a separate task force to start looking at health concerns and logistics for the August and November elections? I guess in other words, you were again on that on the call with Administrator Phillips, and testing of workers who are actually working in the election precincts and potential testing of voters coming in to vote, understanding that early voting takes place over a 2-week period. Then you have about 200 precincts you have to cover on election.
So I'm going to reach out to Phillips, but we have quite a few subcommittees that address specific areas under the COVID-19 response, and I'd be happy to work with her to do a subcommittee that focuses specifically on preparation for voting, ensuring that the needs of the volunteers are met, the staff are met, as well as the constituents. She's on my list of people to reach out to today.
Thank you. Chairman, Billingsley and I were just talking, we need to make sure we reach out to the election commissioners as well, from elected official to elected official, to make sure they're on top of that as well. I'm sure they are, but we just want to make sure this is a priority for us and hopefully for them. So we'll be reaching out to the election commissioners as well. Amber Mills, Commissioner Mills, you recognize?
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Turner. My question, one, you hit on the health department in Millington is going to start testing. Did you give a date for that they will begin that?
I haven't given a date yet, in part because we haven't typically been doing testing, so we've got to make sure we have the testing supplies there. I'll be meeting with our team this week, and hopefully we'll be able to do that within a week to 10 days.
My next question, the numbers in Millington, well, in the suburbs, but Millington I'll focus on since we're talking about Millington, have been low. Is it because there's a lack of coronavirus people affected out there, or because there hasn't been testing and we just don't know yet?
It could be either, but if you think about the individuals who have been tested or those who have been ill, and so if we had a higher number of cases in Millington, I would have expected a proportion of those to be ill and to seek testing, even if it was at a healthcare facility. So I actually think it's more a representation of the fact that you have lower cases, but we'll have more information as we expand testing. It's not uncommon in any community that the majority of cases start in the inner city core where there's more density of population, and then move out to the suburbs from there.
Okay, and then my last question, is there, I know, and everybody's probably split on when to open up, whether to stay closed, but is there any consideration given to a carve out for the suburbs if Memphis isn't ready, but the suburbs are? We're backed up to, I'm looking out my window now, my property line ends at the Fayette County line. We've got surrounding counties opening up. Is there any consideration for a carve out date for the municipalities?
So I'm going to leave that to the elected officials. Generally, that's why we're having frequent meetings, is we really are striving to have a unified voice and a unified approach. And then I think what layers it for us here is that the health department actually is a county-wide health department, and our health directives, while we can within the health directives indicate that a municipality might have more stringent restrictions, we generally don't say that they have less restrictions. And so if there's a decision by the elected officials to do some type of carve out, we would have to work with them to assure our health directive match that. But I can say everyone's really aiming to have a unified voice and a unified approach. We know individuals who live outside of the city of Memphis travel in and out of the city of Memphis. And so if we're not all on the same page, we're going to have a resurgence of disease, and it's going to expand really into all the municipalities.
Thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you, Director Haushalter, for all your hard work, and thank you for the time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Commissioner Mills. Commissioner Mick Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and hello, Director Haushalter. Thank you for being with us again today. Quick question on the on the back to business plan, part of that is numbers that you're looking at as far as the hospitalizations. And I'm wondering if, I know the state of Tennessee is providing some numbers on hospitalizations, as well as I think as of yesterday, I think I saw some numbers on capacity. Is there any point at which the county will be able to share the numbers of hospitalizations and more information about hospital capacity?
Thank you. It's a good question. Some of that information is shared during the joint task force meetings. A portion of that data is actually state data that we can't release publicly, but I would be more than happy, if need be, to share components of that with the commission so that you have a better knowledge of what the capacity is, as well as the number of people who have been hospitalized. I can say the number of people hospitalized has inched up over the last several days. That's in part because we do have an older population that's becoming ill and requiring hospitalization, but that's a small number of increases. It's statistically significant, but it is a small number. So if you don't mind, I'll offline with Karan to see how best to get you some of that information and still adhere to the state's regulations on sharing that information.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Wright. All right, next we have Commissioner Brandon Morris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just going to ask the director a question that I think you've partially answered, but a constituent has inquired about the corrections and the testing and infection rate and of both staff and inmates, if you please.
What I had presented today really was raw numbers. We haven't calculated the infection rate. So that's something we will work on as we're doing the cluster investigation. Right now, what I can say is that the cases are associated with specific pods. It's not necessarily widespread across the facility. It's individuals who were exposed to others within the same pod area. But as you know, within the facility, we have to look at movement within the facility, movement potentially to court or other places, and we're still going through all of that data given the number of individuals that have been identified. So please look for more to come, because there's a lot more analysis that needs to be done, and we'll be happy to present that information.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Commissioner Morrison. And I guess there's an organization that's been doing a good job, I think, reaching out to everyone, Director Household or Micah. And a lot of our questions are being facilitated or being asked because of them. And I think I just have a concern here while Sheriff Bunner has done a good job reporting on 201 Poplar. We have not received the same level of reporting from Director Alexander regarding the Division of Corrections. And I think that's a concern. You know, I think to get more direct, maybe it's just a briefing that needs to take place with Micah, which is a very important and strong organization here within our community. And maybe there needs to be a way to facilitate more transparency and fluidity of information to the general public from the Division of Corrections. And I know that may be a question for you as well as Mr. CAO Gillum and Mayor Harris, but this is just a concern coming from Micah. And I guess, is there a way that you think, Director Householder, that we can facilitate that?
Yeah, I'd be more than happy to participate or facilitate. I would just need to know who to reach out to at Micah, or they can reach out to me and we'll coordinate something.
Okay, Miss Ayanna Watkins is the Executive Director, and Miss Megan Keel is also on the task force for them. So I'll make sure you have both of their emails and contact numbers. All right. Commissioner Tammy Sawyer.
Good morning. How are you, Dr. Householder?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Good. Hi, Commissioner Turner. So just wanted to actually follow up on that and one other thing. I'm like a broken record here. As far as the information, if we could get that as well, we are still not getting daily updates. We get the email that goes out with the numbers, but no information from the task force. So when people are talking about having a coordinated response and a coordinated opening, you still have a whole body that's out of the loop. So I don't know, Chairman Turner or Chairman Billingsley or yourself, but I mean, we find out what we find out in the media. And so I don't know how we're supposed to have a coordinated response if we continue to be out of the loop and we're halfway through this thing. So I'll continue to reiterate that until we get those daily updates from the task force. And that's not just to you, Dr. Haushalter, that's to anyone who's listening. And so, but to follow up on the corrections portion, I would like to get that information as well. I know we've heard updates on 201. I would like to hear an update on what's happening, if anything new is happening with the youth and juvenile detention. And then a lot of concerns coming out of corrections our way. I've got a letter that I received last week from an inmate who said that they weren't getting daily sanitizing happening. And so I just want to make sure that we're doing all we can, because while the inmates themselves aren't leaving, so they're not leaving and interacting, the in and out of guards can have an impact. So we want to make sure that they're equipped with everything they can to lower any clusters that continue to form at corrections. My other question is that I'm working on a similar resolution to what was put forth, the ordinance by the city of Memphis, mandating that everyone wear masks when they're outside of the homes, especially since we're approaching reopening more and more every day. My biggest concern is that other cities have put fees associated with these resolutions. So like Birmingham put a $500 fee. I think that's a bit egregious considering our poverty levels. And then what do you do when someone doesn't pay that? So I'm trying to think through, and I invite any commissioners who'd like to co-sponsor or work on that themselves to reach out. But any thoughts you have about the way that we can make sure that once we reopen, I'm on social media all the time. And I mean, just this morning I was scrolling and people are posting all these pictures with no mask on, and they're doing good work. Like they're delivering meals, no mask. They're picking up water bottles for people, no mask. And so I would just like to hear more about that as well. And my final question for you, Commissioner Turner, said you have to go, so I can just shoot an email on that. But this is for the administration as well. Before I got on screen, there was a discussion about the languages. I did hear back from Micah. They said they'd only recommended some people, but they actually weren't working on translation. So I'm not sure if Director Haushalter, you can probably go on this, but if Director Young wants to hop on screen, if she's still here, I think it's our duty as the county to make sure that we are employing someone to do the translations, and that Spanish is not the only language that we need to be focused on. I'm now on the state task force for health disparities, and what we talked about a lot last week were that we often just do English and Spanish, and there's a lot of other languages that need to be addressed as quickly as possible. And so I would like to get that information to whomever the right person is. We can't put that on our partner organizations. That needs to be on us.
If I can comment on the translation piece first, I agree with you fundamentally. I've been in public health practice a considerably long time, and I'm accustomed to interpreters on staff as well as certified medical translators being available. I actually think that's a comment probably to administration and our ability to actually have policies in place and supports in place to be able to allow for adequate interpretation and translation services. And I agree in all the languages that are needed. My experience in Nashville is we always translate the top 5 based on the demographics and then additional ones as needed. And then second was in regards to facial coverings, and I've kind of moved my language to facial coverings versus masks because some people can't afford masks.
Right.
I support people wearing facial coverings over their nose and mouth in public. I have significant concerns for people who either can't afford to have a mask, or I might just say an individual who may have mental illness or some other barrier to following those instructions, or for some reason can't wear the mask. I would hate to see them penalized either financially or not to be able to receive service because they didn't have the facial covering on. So I clearly defer to the commission on the language there, but I think we have to be particularly sensitive, not just to the issues of poverty, but also people experiencing homelessness or who may experience mental health disorders that may impede their ability to wear a facial covering.
Thank you for that. I appreciate the input. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Turner.
I thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Soria. And I think Director Haushalter needs to be released to do her noon briefing. So we appreciate you, Director Haushalter, and we'll see you on TV at the briefing. Drive safely and be careful.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, commissioners, if there are any further follow-up questions for Director Haushalter, let's just do that via email or text. I appreciate all the questions thus far. And let's see here. That was our one and only item before hospitals and health. If there are no other, if there's nothing else before hospitals and health at this time, we are adjourned. Thank you.
Please check your sound, Commissioner.
I tell you what, Commissioner Jones, you want me to start while we get your sound ready? Well, why am I asking? Because I can't hear him. Bad question. But let's try it again.
All right, Kate. All right, hold on.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Budget and Finance is now in session. Commissioners, can we do something? We got 4 items, but I need to bring something before these items because it's going to affect what's happening to these items. So what I'd like to do, can we do that without objection? Because I do have an add-on that needs to come before we get to these other items because it's going to have some effect on that. So can we do that without objection? All right. Hearing no objections, Madam Parliamentarian, you have a add-on from Commissioner Ford.
Give us a couple minutes. I'm so sorry, Mr. Chairman. She got knocked off. She is adding herself back in now. Please hold 2 minutes.
Okay.
Is this the appropriate resolution, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
She's connecting. I apologize.
Sorry, everybody. Connection's bad.
All right, Madam Parliamentarian, how you doing, Chairman? Okay, Chairman's back. We got the parliamentarian back, I thought. I just saw her a second ago, Chairman Jones.
I'm here.
There
I
she
just-
is.
My internet connection. I apologize.
All right. We have the add-on in front of us. We're asking you to go ahead and read that resolution in the record.
Okay. I believe this item is add-on item number 5. Item 5 is a resolution to strongly request the mayor's administration to present to the Shelby County Board of Commissioners a proposal for the uses of the $49,921,022.30 in funding Shelby County government received on April 24th, 2020 from the federal government's Coronavirus Relief Fund prior to the vote on the fiscal year 2021 operating budget, sponsored by Commissioner Edmund Ford Jr. and Chairman Pro Tempore Eddie S. Jones Jr.
Mr. Budget Chair, I'd like to move this item on the floor.
Okay. I'd second it.
And Mr. Chair, just a couple of minutes, I can talk about this particular item.
Go ahead.
All right. Very quickly, commissioners and others, Commissioner Jones and I found out Monday morning, probably about an hour before the budget hearing started, a couple of days ago, that the county received, as you can see, $49,921,022.30. Assuming that this news was going to be brought forward Monday, since we did have a budget hearing on Monday, we noticed that it did not. Not saying that the administration necessarily was not prepared to talk about the $49.9 million, but that money was received Friday evening by the county. Commissioner Jones and I worked on a resolution to ensure that these funds were appropriated accordingly. You did have the mayor talk about it just a little bit in general government. But in order to make sure that this resolution that Commissioner Jones and I worked on since Monday, I went and I acquired guidance on this particular matter by reaching out to Mayor Jim Strickland, his CFO, Shirley Ford, and other administrators in his cabinet as they were working on their budget and their allocation as well. Collectively with my father who's on the city council, Councilman Ed Ford Sr., as well as the legislative body, yesterday legislation was researched and passed with 12 votes by the Memphis City Council. So the resolution in front of you, using their guidance and using their legislation as a model that we've been working on since Monday, this resolution was created prior to this meeting and is in front of you today. So just a few highlights in this resolution. If you notice, this resolution does include the exact dollar amount to the penny. On the second page, no, we're on the second page, all right. If you notice on the second page, it also gives a few highlights that are very similar to the ones that the city of Memphis has been researching and has been executing. So if the city of Memphis can do it right and they can be proactive, I believe that this county administration can do the same thing. Secondly, we do have at least 5 commissioners who represent some of the munis. I'm sorry, hold on one second. Siri thought I was talking to her. Sorry about that. All right. We have about 5 commissioners that represent areas known as the munis who may not have qualified for the grant because of their population. So if you look at the second, be it further resolved, I want to make sure that those 6 munis are included, because just like what Commissioner Billingsley stated, and I know other commissioners who represent those areas have reached out, they've stated that they will do their due diligence to see what the Arlington Mayor, Barley, Collierville, Lakeland, Germantown, and Millington munis would also need. So when you look at this resolution as a whole, we have $49.9 million that was put into our account on Friday night. And this resolution is parallel with what the city of Memphis has done, but it also ensures that we as commissioners are aware of these expenditures. And the piece that I added, and I know that Commissioner Jones definitely wanted this to be added in the language, is that we are able to identify, just like what the city of Memphis is doing, where these $49.9 million are going prior to getting this budget passed. So I think this resolution is on time. I think it's thorough, and I think it's responsible enough to where not only are we making sure that this $49.9 million is appropriated accordingly, but we also make sure that those munis are also considered, and we also make sure that we are being fiscally accountable. When we finish disposing of this item, you'll see the reason why this item needs to be first, because Chairman Jones will be bringing the first amendment that we will be asking for you to consider. Chairman Jones, I give it back to you.
All right, so I don't see any commissioner. Do any commissioners have any questions? Because I don't see any in the queue. And without that, then I'll just simply say, let's, okay, Chairman Billingsley. We can't hear you.
Chairman, will you repeat the amount one more time? It's 49 point what million?
Is at the top in the caption, $49,921,022.03. That's the number that was given to me on Friday, Chairman.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, seeing no other commissioners wishing to speak, can we go ahead on and prepare the screen for voting?
Yeah, so just kind of the background, I don't know how much we discussed it.
Commissioner Turner, you,
Yeah, aye.
oh, okay. Well, I'm waiting on her to get the screen up, Ms. Nichols.
Commissioner Turner.
Aye. Aye.
Morrison. Commissioner Morrison.
Aye.
Sawyer.
Aye.
Wiley.
Aye.
Wright.
Aye.
Milton.
Aye.
Brooks. Bradford.
Yes.
Ford.
Aye.
Mills.
Aye.
Lowry.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
And Billingsley.
Aye.
We have I votes from Commissioners Turner, Morrison, Sawyer, Whaley, Wright, Milton, Bradford, Ford, Mills, Lowry, Jones, and Billingsley. We have 12 I votes.
All right, that item goes down with a favorable recommendation. Madam Parliamentarian, I have a budget amendment. Do you have that item before you?
I have a couple. Which one are we
I-
going to start?
I just need the budget amendment, not the resolution, budget amendment.
Okay. Is that an add-on or no?
Yes, it will be we're supposed to be doing budget amendments anyway, but it's not on the agenda because it's part of the calendar schedule. So it is, because it's not on the here, all the budget amendments will be brought in then. So it was on the budget calendar.
Okay, just one second. Let me figure out, because I've received a few things and I just want to make sure I read the correct one.
Mr. Chairman, can we introduce the budget resolution first?
Yeah.
Let me do the amendment, and then the budget resolution can fall to item number
3.
Yeah, item number 3. I just need to do an amendment, so when we get to that, then we can do that.
Chairman,
So
real
I
quick.
just need,
I'm sorry.
I just need the budget amendment read at this time.
Chairman, real quick, just a parliamentary inquiry. And I'm not speaking for Karan, but I'm thinking that Karan is asking for us to have the resolution on the floor before we do that first amendment, just to make sure everything is proper. So we would need to read item 3 first, then go with that amendment that we put together. Is that right, parliamentary?
Yes, thank you. Yes, sir.
All right.
Okay. So we're going to go to
item number 3.
No, let me not do that
Okay.
because I don't want the Kappas thinking anything. There we go.
Okay. Item 3 is a resolution approving and appropriating Shelby County government's operating budget for fiscal year 2021, sponsored by Commissioner Eddie S. Jones, Jr.
And Chairman, I move this on the floor for the purposes of bringing on amendments.
I second it.
All right.
All right. So now I have a budget amendment to item number 3. So Madam Parliamentarian, can you read the budget amendment?
Let's make sure she got the right one. Yeah.
Yes, sir. And I am assuming, Rosalind, that this is add-on item number 6. Add-on item. Yes.
Well, no. Well, as far as the amendments, we'll just say amendment number 1
Amendment number 1, that's correct. You're absolutely right. Okay, amendment number 1 to item 3 is a budget amendment approving and appropriating Shelby County government's operating budget for fiscal year FY 2021 by adopting the FY 2020 operating budget as amended by the Budget and Finance Committee and to reduce FY 20 budget with non-reoccurring line items, cost as adjusted. Sponsored by Commissioner Eddie S. Jones Jr. and Commissioner Edmund Ford Jr.
So moved.
I second it. And so, commissioners, let me go into this and why I think that we need this amendment. It was put out in the media that we had a $40 million shortfall. It went all over media. And then it came back and we did a proposed budget was given to us that increased that. And so in just common terms, if you think about it this way. So let's say Larry went to the bank and he already owed the bank $10,000. So that means he has $10,000 in debt. But Larry, he got a little promotion on his job, decided he wanted to get a new vehicle. He gets the new vehicle, but that increased it by $50,000. That increased his debt now by $60,000. And then Larry he didn't have the revenue because his job reduced his hours. So he didn't have the revenue, but he still had the debt. So Larry had to go back and refinance all of his debt. And so if you look at the budget process and the way that it was given to us, it almost happened in that way. So if I say we're already short, but I propose a budget that is $30 million more, I just increase my debt. And if but I did some cuts to cut it down, but it still reduced me in a negative capacity because apparently we don't have the revenues coming in. And if you got a shortfall and you have all of these, basically your budget should be reducing, not increasing. So the best way that I could look at this in the FY 20 and all the numbers in the book was to say, you know what? We could go back to the FY 20 budget as is. Remove all of the one-time occurring costs. Guess what? I just reduced that debt down some more. And then you have to make some adjustments in there. But I think moving forward, we need to just adopt that budget and then build it up so that we're not increasing so much more in debt as we were told that we were. And working with the administration, every time you talk to them, oh, this we got negative this, and negative that. But if you go back to the FY 20 budget to adopt it as your 21 budget, remove all of the one-time costs, non-occurring, you just reduce the FY 20 budget again. So just this is what I am proposing that we do so that we can be fiscally sound moving forward in the adoption of the FY 21 budget. And so I'm open to any questions that anybody may have regarding this.
Chair.
Vice Chair.
All right, very quickly, and this is why I support the resolution as well. Ladies and gentlemen, just I want y'all to look at what's on the floor, what was proposed. Well, let's look at what was proposed first. This proposed budget that this mayor brought was based on a lot of assumptions. It includes cuts, but like what my colleague said, it's an increase of approximately $30 million on top of this fiscal year, including a wheel tax increase of $16.50. I mean, as written, it's argued that it's damaging to people who are going to work or trying to find work. Secondly, this wheel tax, which requires 9 votes, shifts money from public transportation possibilities to schools. If you go back and look at the proposed budget that this mayor brought forward, the same number of pennies that were supposed to go to schools has decreased by 4 cents. That's an issue with me, because this proposed budget, assuming that this commission does not vote in favor twice with 9 votes, you're going to have a $10.5 million shortfall. So again, this budget has a lot of assumptions, and somebody that's been reading the charter, it could be questioned whether this proposed budget actually violates that. This should all be about Shelby County. The mayor brought a budget larger than FY 2020. Let's use the FY 2020 numbers as our foundation, because this commission was able to pass a balanced budget last year. And then let's go from there with the necessary increases, such as making sure that the sheriff has its $1.2 million increase. Let's also look at making sure that the salaries, where Commissioner Mills and I wanted to make sure that people were, especially law enforcement officers, received a comparable salary. Unfortunately, the former CAO and CFO ended up halving the salary increases where they started in January. So if we want to make them whole, that will be a slight increase. But ladies and gentlemen, at least we'll have a foundation where we can go from there, and we should be able to come up with a balanced budget on time, if not early. And I say that because I would like to go ahead and make sure that we can work collaboratively to do so. I got confidence that we can. And I know that item number 4 is going to be coming up regarding the wheel tax. So let me say this in conclusion, Chairman. I look forward to voting against this wheel tax, which I believe is absolutely not necessary for schools. With this proposal that we are looking at, it should have never been brought up in the context of schools who are getting federal money anyway. And any proposed budget should not have a decrease in pennies for education. Now, I've been the most critical on Shelby County schools. So if this commissioner is saying don't take pennies away from Shelby County schools, do I need to say anything else? I'm done.
All right, thank you. And so also know this. As we were going through this shortage crisis, you had all of the other electeds decided that they could give back 1.8 million. The sheriff was going to give back 2.6 million. That's another almost 4.5 million that you can even reduce off of this budget, along with the other reductions, make some adjustments, and I guarantee you we'll still be lower than the 1.4 billion. And so if it's about being more fiscally sound, but still being able to provide necessary services to our citizenry, then that is what this particular resolution will do. More than happy to work with the administration on adjustments, because as you look into the FY21 budget, there was even more monies that were cut out that was budgeted for that you don't need, like in OPEB. So that's additional money. This is to help us with our shortfall. By adopting this particular budget, what it will do, we'll get ready to go into an appraisal year. If we can stay focused and balanced and less than what has been proposed to us, we put ourselves in a better position, because going through the appraisal year, I can assure you that the state will take in all of the considerations of what COVID has done and make those adjustments when sending back the new appraisal rates for that. So you got a year on that to do that. And so this is why I propose, myself and Vice Chair propose bringing this amendment to the budget. So does any commissioners have any questions?
Chairman, if nobody has any other questions, I just want to reiterate something you said at the end of no commissioners, but I'll yield to them if anybody wants to get in the queue first before we continue. I think Commissioner Morrison.
I had a comment. I don't know if you saw it. My screen, oh, there it's, I'm sorry, was pointed up. I just wanted to respectfully say thank you all for bringing this. But this resolution does not make sense to me. I just fundamentally believe that to be fiscally responsible in this kind of environment is going to require some tough cuts and a lot of hard work. And respectfully, I believe that the reappraisal rate is not something you can really look to because all of our citizens are hurting. And so just expecting to bring in more funds because of raising values in this environment is not likely to happen, in my opinion, because at least at this time, the citizens are hurting to pay the taxes as they stand. That's the report we've heard already from our trustee, as you all well know. So I think the most fiscally responsible thing, and the reason I'm going to not be able to vote for this resolution is to look to make cuts in our budget and to bring a balanced budget. I also agree that I'm against the support of the wheel tax for education, as Commissioner Ford just also said he was. So anyhow, I just wanted to explain my reasoning and encourage the commissioners to look to our being more fiscally responsible with the budget. Thank you.
All right, so Commissioner Morrison, so to your point, we are being fiscally sound. This will reduce, right now, currently before is 1.4 billion.